have I got in my heart today? Is there too much ego? Have I got too much hate? Have I got too much stress? Is there too much cortisol? Is there too much dopamine? What am I doing today to become the best quality human being I can? And then you realize it's a process, and that process only becomes successful if every day you're making another little tweak. And then over time, you have become a totally different person. But reason most people, they never do that. They never do that, and so they go stale. And saal nang jande, and they're the same people. Does that make sense? That is actually the complete opposite to what Sikhi is. Sikhi is every morning ardas, hukamnama. Hukamnama is what you're going to change in your life today. Does that make sense? And therefore, what it is do not set your Sikhi by everybody around you. You're going to become stale like everybody else. Set your Sikhi by your own aspirational standards. You will have no care for anybody around. And I'll talk a lot about today how you never allow the kalara of other people to bring back your. So I've seen that most parents, they only parenting ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਈ ਆ. So if you look at a lot of your experiences as a child in a house, some of your parenting that your parents have done may be really good and some of it really bad. Do you agree? And so, surely, if you go, do courses, all of you do courses on how to be better at your job. Put your hands up if you do. Yeah? So if you do courses on how to be better at your job, the biggest project in your life is your child. Your biggest amanat in your life is your child. Surely we should be doing courses on how to become better parents and grandparents. Because kei loka nu menu kende hunde na parenting course, main ki sikhna parenting course te, mainu to kot kha ke akal aayi hai, and I say to him, well, that because tu menu ek gall kahi hai, ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਮਤਲਬ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਅਕਲ ਆਈ ਨਹੀਂ, otherwise you wouldn't even have said that to me. But this is the way we are. ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਬਸ ਕੱਢ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ, ਮਾਰ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਆਹ ਕਰ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ. And what that showed me, you don't even know what being Punjabi is. But what we've done is we're denigrating ourselves all the time instead of doing what actually being from the land of the Guru and the Dharti is, which is basically becoming highly intellectual, highly spiritual, and high achievers. Does that make sense? Why, Guru? So all of us can learn to be better parents and grandparents. Do you agree? Okay. Right. So, the Gurmukh rules of children. So the key thing here, just like now, we're going to start on time. I could wait another half an hour for it to turn up, then you won't finish this evening. So, people have to learn everything about life is about time and money. If you want to achieve anything in life, you got time, you got money, and then the third thing is, that you have kirpa, there's nothing in life you cannot achieve. And therefore, if you start having that mindset, become high achievers. If you basically have the mindset of basically, we're just going to be chilled, jo ho gaya, theek hai, then everything in your life is accidental. Some good things happen, some bad things happen. Because all you're doing is, like they say, going with the flow. Going with the flow is one way of saying, I don't design my life, other people design my life. Or other events design my life. Does that make sense? Learn to design your own lives. That's the key of successful people. On je main ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕਹਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੋ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸੰਗਤ ਤੋਂ who's a really spiritual person. Automatically ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਕਰਨਾ ਆ, you're going to look at people older than you. You're going to think, our Singh, he does a lot of seva, and you automatically think that. But if you really analyze it, sometimes the most Gurmukh gurus in your sangat are not the elders, they're the children. because the children have less access to Kam Krodh Lobh Monkar. And if you teach your children Simran and Kirtan and Bani at a really young age, they progress really fast in their Sikhi. Because ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੀ ਹੋਇਆ, we have become so colonialized, we have got so much, we've adapted so much to Gore ways of thinking, and I'm going to talk about that a lot today. And what happens with Gore, they've had such bad experiences with Christianity, and especially with abuse in children. Gore have become very left-wing. So they will say to you now, like Tommy Robinson's now trying to save this country's Christianity. He's full of Clara himself. And what it is this country is now so far away from any kind of value system, they don't even know who they are. Does that make sense? And therefore they have no identity because they've had bad experiences with Christianity because of what's happening with abuse of children. We've not had that. So Gore will say to you, oh, don't push religion into your children until they're 17, 18. And oh, don't tell your children about religion, let them make their own decisions. By 17, 18, they've got so much into the pace of a technological and hypersexualized society that they don't know how to handle Sikhi. They don't know how to handle it. Whereas if you make your children spiritual from a young age, they don't get distracted by the hypersexuality and the whole everything else, all the Clara of life. Okay, we're going to discuss them ideas a bit more today. Does that make sense? So when you go to other towns, even here in the south, but particularly North and Midlands here, and in Toronto and Vancouver, and maybe a couple of areas in California, Melbourne as well, you'll find that there's loads of children that will sit through whole ransoms. 6, 7. Now, that is not normal. In normal cheez nahi hai for a 6-7 saal da bachcha to sit through 10 hours of kirtan. In normal nahi hai. Wo kaate karte hain because them families have basically, that's much better. Them families have realized that we need to make our children spiritual from day one. And I've done that with my kids. And my kids have gone through top private schools, they're going through top universities. Why? Because from day one, you created their relationship with Simran. Does that make sense? So you need to get away from all these ideas of, no, let your children make their own decisions. No, give your children a taste of Gurbani and let them go on their own journey. Because jinne chair ona ko kat Kam Krodh Lobh Monkar, they are going on spiritual journeys. Does that make sense? And when you go to Toronto, particularly, because the amount of Sikh schools there are there, the amount of kids that are reading, I just was in Vancouver 3-4 weeks ago, the amount of kids that are doing Sahaj Path, Larivar Path, the amount of Path that's happening, the quality of Kirtan in Khalsa school, the amount of rags and tals and instruments they're doing is better than Darbar Sahib now. The Darbar Sahib grantees that come to Vancouver Khalsa school, they're saying, we don't know some of these rags. There's a whole people around the world who have now, because ki hoya, in all our communities, the first generation survive. Ona ko masih kar khareed hunde hai. Masih ona ko job kar hunde hai. Second generation are a bit more comfortable. But now you're getting to third generation, people are very comfortable. And so they're investing in their children. They're investing in their children in sports, they're investing in their children in the Sikhi, and they're creating mass infrastructure. And so they're creating these schools, they're creating these environments, they're putting their kids in the environments, and them kids are thriving. Does that make sense? Why, Guru? So, the key thing is the Gurmukh crews of children. So, innocence is a very important commodity in your Sikhi. What do we call innocence in Punjabi or Gurmukhi? What do you think? Polapa, very good. Jamasumiyat. Masumiyat is very important in your Sikhi. Bhagat Tanna ji, he was innocent. And through his innocence, he found a God book. And the thing is, all your children are born very innocent. So who are the first people that teach your children Kam Kulo Momkar? Who do you think? The parents. Okay, so this is where we're starting this course. The first thing to realize, Gandhi Loria, as parents, you can damage your children. As parents, you can damage your children. And that is a very important thing to learn. Because bahut sare lokan na ki hunda hai, they never change their behavior in their house when they have a child. And because ohi behavior carry on karde hai, they don't realize how destructive that behavior is to that child. So when you get that child, it's a khali paper. It's your choice as a parent what you put on that paper. And so it's very important, regardless of ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕਿਦਾਂ ਦਾ behavior ਜਾਂ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ level of ski in your house, the day you have a child, you have to really first influence of you only have one childhood. It's a bit of both. There's कई चीज़ां positive होंदियां, कई चीज़ां negative होंदियां. Does that make sense? And now the thing is, बहुत सारे बच्चे, I meet them, and because they've had negative experiences in childhood, especially in schools, it affects them for the rest of their lives. And it will take them many decades to undo the damage that's happened to them during childhood. So people, the way they get bullied, people where they have a lot of argument in houses. For example, I'll tell you a recent one in Toronto. Recently I was in Toronto with 800 people at this parenting course. And there was a family there that specifically wanted me to speak to their child. Their child is now 24 years old and he won't leave the bedroom. Or bedroom nishanta, he's playing computer games all the time. No interest in education, no interest in doing anything else. He just sits there. And they thought I was going to talk to that child because the child is the problem. And I said to them, ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਨਵੇਂ ਆਏ ਸੀ Canada ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, did you argue a lot in the house? And they goes, yeah, ਅਸੀਂ argue ਬਹੁਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ. It was tough, had no money, mostly survived, child was growing up. And I said, because ਤੁਸੀਂ argue ਕਰਦੇ ਸੀ in the house, your child needed a safe space to get away from your arguments. And his safe space became his bedroom. And his computer became his best friend. So the reason he is like this now is because of what he experienced with you 15, 20 years ago. And then they both started crying. Because now they're very wealthy. Now all their problems disappeared. But their problems become their child. And you see that. That is the thing. The seeds of your problems from the future, and the key thing I try to put into you in the parenting course is learn to be preventative parents. Which is what I'm going to do by the end of today. You're going to look at everything in your family totally differently. Because you're now going to start thinking about, well, if this carries on now, in 10 years' time, this is going to be a problem in my house. So I need to sort this out now, rather than being the people later on trying to deal with much bigger problems. Does that make sense? Waheguru? Okay, so the key thing is, asiya ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ damage ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ. Now, so the first thing you got to do is you got to have a plan for your house. Because ਅਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, we cause our own problems. So because some convenience ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਆ, you come home from work, you're really tired, your wife maybe comes home from work, she's very tired, you just want to sit down, you want to relax. But what you don't realize is your child, he's not seen you all day, but she's not seen you all day. And your bacha's 4 years old. So your bacha wants to play with you, but you're tired. And you're thinking, I don't want to handle this now. So what is the convenient thing to do is go and buy your bacha an Xbox. Go and give your bacha your mobile phone and say, give my kid love. And so you've done that now because it's convenient. Yeah? Ki hoya 10 saal baad ਇਹ ਉੱਠਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ Xbox ਤੋਂ ਇਹ ਗੇਮਾਂ ਖੇਡਣੋਂ ਹਟਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ but you're the one that bought the Xbox in the house in the first place. Does that make sense? So what you want to do now is think about what is your master plan with your child. So if you set up a business, I run 3 businesses. When you set up a business, the key thing for you is that you have an idea of what I'm trying to achieve. मैं इस business में achieve की करना चाहना है. Does that make sense? I know. So I run, for your knowledge, my main business is a nursing home. I know. So we specialise in cancer care, end of life care, brain injuries. We do very high end care, very technical. I have about 90 people that work for me in that business, and we also have a construction business and a property business as well. And that's why all of these courses are free. Is because basically for us it's just Nishkam Seva. And that's when we have free time, we go and do something else for a month. And we don't charge for it, this is not my occupation. And does that make sense? And now, when you have that business, you have to realize, if I want to be successful in this business, I got to have a mission statement. I got to have something I want to achieve. So this is something I wrote 20 years ago about what we're going to do with our children. Okay, you can tell me if you agree with this or not. So 20 years ago, how do we strike the balance between allowing them to discover the world, operate effectively to become visionaries of the future, but at the same time guiding them to become Abhyasi Gursikhs? So let's now analyze that. I see you analyze very good. We want them to discover the world. Do you want your children to do that? You don't want your children to be Nikamme. Do you agree? Okay. Then you want them to operate effectively, become visionaries of the future. I want my children to design this world, not just be silent observers. Because if all the good people become silent observers, you get people like Donald Trump in power. This is what happens. Is the idiots that take power. So you've got to create people and make them decision makers in the way life is going. Does that make sense? Do you agree with that? So why is this important? The reason this is important is when you understand the migrant journey, you are all children of migration. Do you agree? Because ਤੁਹਾਡੇ parents are migrant, and migration has a massive negative experience on most people's lives and their relationships. Because some of you, now put your hands up if your parents want. Okay, right. Now, so for your parents, for most of you, and they stayed where they were. So whether that was Afghanistan, or whether that was Punjab, or whether that was Delhi or Africa, where most people in UK are coming from, they would have had all their families around them, all their cousins and brothers and sisters. Their life would have been much better because they've had a psychological support structure. But because they become a migrant, another psychological support structure tot janda hai. So all and they might have a sister sitting in Vancouver, they might have a brother living in Melbourne or in Punjab or somewhere else. Do you agree? And so ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋਕ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ around ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸੁੱਖ ਦੁੱਖ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਉਣ ਲਈ, where they can share what's going on in their lives, they're all killering around the world and they're all going through their own trauma. Does that make sense? And so imagine in my hand there's a bird. There's this bird. You see this bird is flying. Can you see that? Yeah? Now the bird has 2 wings. You have your dunyavi side and you have your spiritual side. Now when you go through migration, one generation pura jod lata on their dunyavi side because they have to survive. They have to come to a new place, have to buy houses, do jobs, work shifts, manual labor, and they just have to survive. Now when you study migration, there's a common pattern, and it doesn't matter kiri community here. The common pattern is, get a second generation, they become educationally very strong. Because all realize karde hai ki je main nahi padda mainu ohi kaam karne paine a ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੇਰੇ parents ਕਰਦੇ ਸੀ. And so it doesn't matter where you go in the world, the children of migrants are always generally well educated. But then you've now got two generations on the side, and they've neglected their other wing. How long do you think it can keep flying? At some point it's going to get tired, isn't it? It's going to get fatigued. And And this is the state of our families. The state of our families is this, is that we have now come to these countries, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਘਰ ਆ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਗੱਡੀਆਂ ਆ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਜੌਬਾਂ ਆ, ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸਾਂ ਆ, ਪਰ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੁਖੀਆ ਸਭ ਸੰਸਾਰ. Which means internally in your family, there's a lot of dukh, there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of depression. And because what it is we need in our families this rebalance with our atmic side. Because your dukh and your depression and all of these things are only get healed through Gurbani. Does that make sense? And if we neglect Gurbani in our lives and everything is worldly, it becomes very cold, it becomes very mechanical, and it becomes very matlabi. And you find most people are very matlabi. You find most people are only interested in how it can affect their lives. And most people don't care about Restadariya. Most people don't care about anything. They'll care more about the Premier League than they'll care about the people around them. Does that make sense? Waheguru? And so, the key thing, because I've been to places like Hong Kong, I've done this course in Hong Kong, and we're here second, third generation. When you go to Hong Kong, they're on seventh, eighth generation. Because there was a migrant route that would go from Amritsar to Kolkata, Kolkata to Singapore, Singapore to Hong Kong, Hong Kong to Vancouver, Vancouver to Singapore. It's the famous migrant route that we had, and for over 150 years Sikhs have been doing that, as well as many other people from many other communities. And every place where you go there, you'll find these Gurdwara that are 100 years old, 150 years old, etc. And people have been living there for that long. When you go to Singapore, when you go to Hong Kong, when you go to Vancouver, etc. Even San Francisco, you go to Stockton Gurdwara, where the Gaddar party was, where Gurdas Singh Sarabha was and everything. You go there. This is part of our Qawm's history. Does that make sense? So they've gone there. They're 6th, 7th generation. And you would look at them, they go to the Gurdwara exactly the same way, they'll do everything, but you have realized that actually a lot of work for them to maintain their sanity. Because 6, 7 generations away from your roots is very difficult. Does that make sense? Waheguru? So the key thing is, unless you don't have that balance with abhyas in your family, you're going to end up being Gore. And Ajta Gore in this talk. And don't think I'm racist against Gore. It's not I'm racist against Gore, it's that I'm talking about how westernized thinking is going to screw up your families. Because Gore and their families are totally, they've got no value systems. They've got nothing. They've got no relationships. Even if they have to get together for Christmas just for one day, they don't know how to interact as a family because their whole value systems are broken up. And when you travel around the world, you'll see that. Because in America, in Central Belt, especially Christian people, they're trying to survive with that value system and family, etc. UK's totally lost it. Europe's totally lost it. They look at UK and Europe thinking, it's the Makarabia, Waheguru? When you look at a problem, Gurbani teaches us, don't just look at the problem, look at the source of the problem. Only then can you give the right medication. You're a wise healer if we understand the source of the problem. So the source of the problem for us is we've been through this migrant journey. And most people don't know their own story. And now I'm going to tell you your story. Because ਤੁਹਾਡੀ story ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ, you don't even know how it's affecting you. And let me tell you that most people growing up of my generation, that were born in the 70s and the 80s, etc., most people are coconuts. They're just brown on the inside and white on the brown on the outside, white on the inside. And even if they're in some insecure, because we've so much been caught into this Western liberal kind of thinking, and we don't even know where our Sikhi starts and where our Sikhi needs to come into our lives. And all we do is we do this ritualistic kind of going to the Gurdwara, but our actual attitudes in life and the attitudes we're giving our children are really destructive, this kind of thinking. And you're probably thinking, well, there's nothing wrong with Western liberal values. I might agree with Western liberal values. So let's dissect these ideas now, and then you can tell me at the end of this if you do. Okay? Because ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਹੁਣ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਗਏ, ਹੈ ਨਾ? So basically here, we've gone from here, migrants, and now gone to here, where we've got people in political power and we think we've been successful. Okay? So let's analyze this idea. Okay? So the first thing is understand who you are. We are people who used to be Maharaja. Asi Maharaja hunde sige, and now we're the workforce. So we've gone through a process here. And most people, if I said to you, you are children of colonization, does anybody understand that? Did you even realize that you're children of colonization? Because believe me, black people realize they are. Other people from other communities realize they are. But we as Sikhs, we don't even talk about these ideas. But they massively affect your life. So, understand what happened to us. So, do you all know who these people are? So these are the billionaires, richest people on this earth. So, inako angint paisa, which means unlimited money. They've got unlimited money, but if you ask them, what do you want in life now that you've got unlimited money? And their three answers are, I want good weather, I want organic food, and I want time. Does that make sense? Now, the key thing is because I do cancer care. You could be a billionaire. If you basically have terminal cancer, your money means nothing. Does that make sense? So you have to understand what is the key things that gives your life value. So they say these three things. When we were in Punjab, we had good weather, we had organic food, and we had time. Those of you who are growing up here, you have no concept of time compared to what you had in Punjab. Because you're so much caught in the fast pace of life. I grew up in West London. Just by moving to Yorkshire, I feel the difference in terms of how much better quality my life is, because life is too fast here. And people in these big cities, like when I'm in New York, where it's much faster than there, they'll say, no, it's good, you become really successful and you make loads of money and you do this. But you also have lots of kharche. And you spend a lot of time in traffic. And as you get older and older, one of the things that you're really going to appreciate in life, especially when you've made good money, is the value of time. When you were in Punjab, and especially if your families have come from Kheti Bari, which means farming, they used to work 1 month in the year, have 6 months off, then work for another month in the year, and then have a number of months off. They used to have marriages where they used to go there for a whole month and just chill. And they had really good weather. And even if you had a job, like you worked in the bank, like Punjab says bank, you can have 3 months of holidays in a year. Bachari, nowadays you have 28 days. And you think it's bad, wait till you go to North America, they only get 14 days of annual leave. So you understand about time. Okay, so apne kol ek koi cheez nahi. So do you have good weather in London? Even if you do, there's a lot of pollution. Most of the food you eat now is genetically modified food. So when I went to Stockton in California, and I did this course there, I stayed with this Singh, Jujaru Singh. He's got 3,000 acres and an almond farm there, and I was staying at his farm. And while we were doing Amrit Vela, he was walking me through his organic garden. His organic garden is as big as this hall. And he's got raspberries and strawberries and peaches and everything. And when you eat them raspberries, they don't taste like your raspberries here. And then peaches, they don't taste like it because they're actually organically grown. And then you realize, oh my God, that is so sweet, that is so nice. Look at the size of that. And you look at what we get in the supermarket, it's crap. And then you realize about organic food. And then the other thing is time. Now, UK is still better than most countries. America is the worst because everything's for profit. So your healthcare is for profit, your education is for profit. But ultimately, when you come into capitalist countries, the biggest thing in design in capitalist countries is credit culture. So most people will spend most of their life just paying mortgages. If you're not paying your mortgages, now they're trying to get you to pay for cars on credit. Then they'll get you to pay for your children's education on credit. And then when you realize how crap the schools are, you're going to try and put your kids into private schools like I've had to. And then you realize how expensive that is. And you spend most of your time just paying bills. Because that is the way the system is designed. Because when you realize these things, everything's designed for the elites. The elites will always make more pesa, and the workforce will always get ragariya. So you have the 2008 financial crisis. The elites gambled the money, everyone else had to pay more taxes. You had COVID. The elites make the money, everyone else pays more taxes. And the government's bankrupt now. What's going to happen? Elites make more money, we're constantly paying more taxes, more inventive ways. Let's put property tax on. Let's put national insurance up even more, and everything else. Ultimately, if you are a workforce, you will spend all your time just working. Put your hands up if you've got jobs. And you here, from the day you've been put into schools, you're brainwashed to have jobs. Let me tell you one thing, if you have jobs, you're going to retire when the retirement age is. And your retirement age will never go down, it will only go up. So what is it now in the UK? I think it's 67. So by the time most of you retired, consider that will probably be about 73. Okay? If you have assets, like those of us that run businesses, we're retiring, I'm retiring next year. The only way you can break this system is by buying assets, getting out of jobs. But your schools will never teach you that because your schools are not designed to put you in the system. Does that make sense? Why do you think I put my kids into private school? I grew up in Slough where we still have grammar schools. I passed my 11 plus. And I didn't know anything about grammar schools, I didn't know anything. But let me tell you about my grammar school. My head teacher, every single assembly, said to us, you are the top 5% of society, you are never going to work for people, people are going to work for you. Every assembly she used to say that to us. And what happened? We've all become like that. People work for me, I've never worked for anybody. Because they created that mindset in me. Whereas your schools, where you're sending your kids, they don't tell them that, because for people to be the elites, we need people to work for us. And for you need to have people to work for us, so most of your schools are not designed to make your children the best quality that they can become. Most of your schools are designed to dumb down your children and just make them blue-collar workers. Because that's how the system works for us, the people that are employers. Does that make sense? You have to get your kids out of that system, out of that thinking, because ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਹਾਂ, ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਆ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹਾਂ. No, but you're still working for somebody. You're not building your own assets. Until you don't, and the way society is going, there's going to be two types of people. There are going to be the people that have property and the people that don't have property. And the people that don't have property will spend all their lives paying rent. And the people that have assets will always be the people that basically have passive income. Does that make sense? But this kind of financial education should have been normal. I have a whole course on how to become financially free, because we're doing it with Gursikhs to basically get them out of this system. Why, Guru? But you are not taught this because you are the workforce. So you are very convenient for governments. And now, even if you have properties, because Punjabis are very good at getting a couple of rental houses, the system is being designed so that you get so fed up and now sell them so that BlackRock can come and buy them. The institutions. So everything's always designed to keep you down. Does that make sense? And we have to realize, Asi Maharaja hunde sige, and the key thing for me is, how are we going to get back and become Maharaja? A Maharaja is someone who controls his own destiny. Does that make sense? And so one of the key things about being a Maharaja is having good financial education. Does that make sense? Do any of you disagree? Because your news will never show you the retirement age by 1 year. Your news won't even show you that. Here they want to keep putting it up, and they want you to be quietly, passively agreeing to it. Does that make sense? So, here, Banda Singh Bahadur was very important in your family history. Now, you might think of Banda Singh Bahadur as in the person, yes, he did that. But once he did that, he did something really important that's affected all your lives. What he did in Punjab, he gave the Aam Banda land. And he distributed land. And as a result, all your families, even if you ended up in other parts of the, like Afghanistan and everything, you all have owned land. That's very important in your sovereignty. The rest of India doesn't own land. They're Nokars. And it's the Thakurs and the Maharaja that own lands. Emitani Bihari, they come running to Punjab because they can buy land here. Land is very important to you. Because Jira Insan has land. Now, have you ever heard of the thing that Punjabi Anakiya? Have you ever heard that? What do you think that means? What do you think that means? Punjabi Anakiya. Gulam nahi hege, which means you're brave and you will do things that everyone else does. So the first thing is, the Baki of India are very different to Punjabis. Not only in their mindset, but even genetically, they're very different. I'm just going to go off at a tangent here. You guys, if you're Punjabis, and even if you go into Afghanistan, because originally a lot of them from Punjab, etc., you have some of the best genetics on this earth. Let me explain. Have you seen how people in Punjab and Haryana, their bodies are from South Indians? Even your skin tone is different. Your body shape is different. You compare yourself to people from Delhi, your bodies are very different. Do you agree? Do you know why that is? Your genetics are totally different. Your genetics is mixed with European genetics, whereas it's actual traditional Indian genetics. There's only three types of people on this earth that have the best genetics. They are Punjabis, they are Vikings, and they are Nigerians. Now, you might think, well, the 100 meters always has black people up front. No, because they were genetically modified through slavery. So they went through 200 years in America where anyone was an intelligent black person, they used to shoot them or kill them, and they got the tallest black person and the tallest black woman, and they breeded them. So genetically, they changed them over 200 years. So that is unnatural. But what you have is natural genetics. And the reason your genetics is like that is these are the only three Qawma that can drink kacha dud, raw milk. And because you can patch kacha dud, your genetics is far superior than everybody else. And you here don't even drink kacha dud. In our family, we've been drinking raw milk for the last 5 years. All my kids are 6'2", 6'3". My son plays academy football. My other son's a mixed martial artist. My young one's now already in tennis, etc. Because if you need to understand your body, and the genetics of your body, you have food for the genetics of your body. Whereas what we're doing is just buying Tesco food. And so that's part of your understanding of what you are. And if you have food for the right genetics of your body, you will be very healthy. But that's the key thing. What you get is some people now become Amritdhari and they become vegans. That's the worst thing you can do. Because after 2 or 3 years, you'll be lactose intolerant. You should never lose that ability to pach kacha dod. Because your immune system will be super strong and you get the pure natural dod, all that in your body. It will make you very high protein, very high in terms of health. Okay, sorry, I'm on off at a tangent there. But it's important you understand your genetics like that. Now, the thing with Punjab, I see Anakia, one, because we're naturally strong, we're naturally brave. But if you look at the history of Punjab, but if you look at historical characters, apart from King Porus, you will not find anyone. But then Guru Nanak Dev Ji came along, and after Guru Nanak Dev Ji, you've had amazing history. So the fundamental thing that changed Punjab is Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Does that make sense? Because then after that, you've had Shaheeds, you've had Bhagats, you've had poets, you've had Sevadars, you've had everything. So the first thing that makes Punjab Anki is Guru Andi Bani. The second thing that makes Punjab Anki is Sikh Ityas, is the history, because you've got role models, you've got people that have done amazing things. But the third thing is that you owned your own land. So let me explain to you why this is important. If you are like the rest of India, they do Naukriyan. If you disagree with the people in power, they will kick you out of your job. It's even happening in America now. Jimmy Kimmel last week. He spoke against Trump, kicked him out of his job. This happens everywhere in the world where you have autocratic regimes. So they will throw you out of your job. Your kids won't be able to have food on the table. And so most people have no choice in life but to accept their life as it is. Does that make sense? But even if you're doing a job in Delhi, even if you're doing a job somewhere else, they kick you out of your job, you go to your kids, your children will always eat. And as a result, Punjabis, because their kids will always eat regardless, they will always say whatever they need to say. They will always stand up against whoever they need to stand up to. Does that make sense? And it's because you had that backup of having your own sovereignty. Now, you guys, because we've come to UK, you've forgotten that you're sovereign people. You've just been brainwashed that you're workforce. And you're brainwashing your children that they're just the workforce. Does that make sense? And you've forgotten that you are actually a qawm, you're a nation. Okay? So let's analyze this even more. So, if you want to understand economics, you come from, when I used to grow up, I used to go back to Punjab, or you go to all these places, like some of you might go to Afghanistan and all these other places, and you think, well, and you go and see places like San Francisco and New York and see all these skyscrapers and everything, and you think they're very advanced, and I used to think like that. But then you don't realize all these countries only got built by looting you. So Punjab is actually the richest country on this earth. And the reason Punjab is the richest country, because agriculturally, if you understand agriculture, there's 3 places on this earth where you have the best soil. They are Punjab, California, and Western Australia. Where it doesn't matter what you put into the ground, it will just come up amazingly. They have the best climate, the best water, and they have the best soil. Okay, does that make sense? And what happened with Punjab is strategically in the middle of the place where you have the most population on this earth. So even today, 2/3 of the world lives in, from Russia, all the way down to Japan, China, all the way down to India, Sri Lanka. That's where most of the world population lives. You think London is busy, go to Hong Kong. You can't walk a meter without someone bumping into you. The level of population over there is far superior than anything you see here. Okay? Now, what happened with Punjab is strategically in the middle of Russia, China, India, Middle East, Europe, and there was a Silk Road. And so all the trade, doesn't matter where it's going through, all of these countries was all going through Punjab. And Punjab, you think of Punjab today, a lot of people look at Punjab and they think, oh, it's a small, and have you ever heard the thing where they said to you, you're 2%? It's Sunyana? Ke tusi da 2% ya. And this is a Hindu trick of making you feel small. Okay? The thing is, you are 2%, but you're 2% of the most populous country on this earth. The country that's got 1.3 billion people. Punjab today has 25 million people living in Punjab. That's more population than most European countries. Punjab is bigger than most European countries. If you take one Gurdwara in Apan, Sri Darbar Sahib, it feeds 100,000 people. Yeah, do you agree? That means that 100,000 people today, the population of Canada is 36 million. That means Punjab can feed all of Canada once a year, just that one Gurdwara. And if you put the actual Punjab, original Punjab of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, you could take all of Italy, Austria, Switzerland, Luxembourg, Holland, put them all together, Punjab is bigger than that. Yeah? Does that make sense? You are actually a world power. You have the 5th largest religion on this earth. You have the 5th most spoken language on this earth, Punjabi. You are a global diaspora. You are a powerhouse on this earth. But most of our kids are brainwashed, and most of you are brainwashed that you are minority. And you guys live in Southall. Now put your hands up if you feel like a minority growing up in the UK. Okay, and you've already put yourself in that mindset, haven't you? And what I do is when I speak to children and I say to them, do you feel like a minority? And all the children will say yes. But then you say to that child, yeah, you feel like a minority because you're growing up in England. And England is traditionally a white country. Even though the Gore are so weak mentally, 80% of this country is white. And they feel like a minority. They're protesting, we want to save England. They're 80% white in this country. That's how mentally weak they are. And so, what it is that you have to realize you might be a minority of brown people growing up in the UK, but actually brown people are the majority on this earth. Because this earth, you have white people at the top, white people at the bottom, in the middle you have the equator, and where you have the equator, everybody's brown-skinned. So when you take the Latinos, when you take the Mediterraneans, when you take the North Africans, when you take the Middle East, when you take India, and then you add the Chinese, etc., you are the majority on this earth. You are the majority on this earth. Brown people are the majority on this earth, but what it is everything to you is projected whiteness. Now this is very important because psychologically, many of you think like white people because what you're trying to do is approve white people. So let me explain that to you. When your parents came here in the 60s and 70s, they, just like when you go to certain parts of America now, or Australia, they will say to them, "Case qatl kar lo, change the way you look, otherwise you won't get jobs." And this is what happened when I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I was born in the 70s. That used to be a common thing. Most of these Gurdwara were like, everyone was Munna. You don't remember them times, until you were younger. Most of these Gurdwara, Amritaris only turned up after 84. Because that was such a shock to the system. And then everything in the Gurdwara started changing because people wanted to discover who they are. Because they just feel attacked. And that changed all your Gurdwara. I remember Havelock Road before 84. I remember these Gurdwara. Now, the key thing for you is that at that time, there was that generation that was just told, as soon as you want to get a job in the 70s, because there was a National Front, you guys don't know what happened in Southall. There was a Munda called Gurdeep Singh, 14-year-old, that was killed in Southall. And then there was riots here when the National Front came, and all the brown people came out and they beat them up in Southall Broadway. That's how Tootie Nuns and Holy Smokes got created. There were two gangs, and then my generation brought them two gangs together and we created Shera Punjab, which was one gang, and that wasn't a gang that did Putte. That was a gang that basically, anyone comes to attack us, Gore or Muslims, we will fight back. It was a community defense system for the community. I remember with my dad, when they were going into pubs and stuff like that, fighting with the National Front, because I was a little 7-year-old that used to have hockey sticks in the back of the Ford Capris, and I used to go and give them hockey sticks, and they used to run into these pubs and smash up all the boarding to tell them, this is Southall, this is Slough, you're not going to come and do this particular gun here. This is now our areas. And that's how these things happen, where you now run these areas. And is because there was a generation that said, we don't give a crap, and we're going to fight. Okay, does that make sense? Because up until that point, people just accepted racism. And then you had a generation that became more Gore than the Gore. Because basically, they were always trying to appease the Gore. Then my generation came along, where we realized there's two types of Gore. There's one Gore that are nice, and it doesn't matter what you are, they'll always be nice to you. And there's another type of Gore that are just racist, and it doesn't matter what you are, they will always be racist to you. So why are you changing who you are to make them happy? I'm going to make myself happy. Does that make sense? And therefore, my generation were the first generation that realized it's really important for you to be in balance and comfortable with your own skin. Okay? And some of you are still going through that because you've not been through the experiences where my generation went through, where we realized we fight or we die. And you either accept racism or you stand up against it. Does that make sense? And the key thing in your kids, if you don't teach your kids about their skin color, about their identity, your kids are always going to be appeasers. And if your children are appeasers, always trying to basically keep the Gore happy, don't tell them what I really believe, because I only can say the things that they accept. As a result, you're always compromised. And if you look at any community, Jiri compromised with who their identity is, they always have massive mental health issues. You look at Aborigines, you look at Inuits, you look at the Aztec people, you look at the original tribes in America, and anywhere where you go, you look at the Roman Gispies, they all got massive mental health problems because they're always trying to not accept who they are, they're always trying to appease other people. Yeah? And when you go to, and I can tell with a 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid, I can have a 30-second conversation with them and I can tell how strong their mindset is. So you say to a kid, and kids are really funny, so you say to a kid in California, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that child in California will say, I want to be a truck driver. And you say, Acha? And this is how intelligent kids are. And you say to him, what? Why do you want to be a truck driver? Why do you want to become a judge? Why do you want to become a doctor? Why do you want to become a business owner? And he will say, Baji, you know the judges in California earn 130k a year, and the doctors earn like 200k a year, and the truck driver earns 250k a year. So why do I want to be one of them? So they're intelligent, they've done their maths. Then I say to them, if you're a truck driver, you only can do it for 10 years, you knacker your back up, you stay away from your family, and everything else. But the kids are already, you see, they reach their aspirational level. I'm going to be a truck driver. It's only a 5, 6-year-old kid. But they're already thinking like that. Now you go to Brampton, now post Jagmeet, you ask what do you want to be when you grow up? Half the class will say, I want to be Prime Minister. Why? Because they've seen someone can operate on that level, and they see him on the TV all the time. Amar Dari Singh, whether the star, I'm not saying agree with everything, but he's a good friend of mine, Jagmeet. But already the aspirational level's gone through the roof. Because the Sikhs in Canada have realized one thing. We can run this country. There is no glass ceilings. It's not like here in the UK, where the Gore keep everything to themselves in their country clubs and their lodges at the top, and you are just the workforce, and that's it. No one runs Canada. It's there for the taking. Does that make sense? And so you're creating your own levels. And what it is the first thing starts with your children being comfortable in their own skin. And do you think you're comfortable in your own skin? I'm not saying you have to answer me, but just think it through. And this conditioning starts at a very young age. So in the 50s, there was an experiment in America. And in that experiment, they had a black girl who was probably about 9 years old, and they put two dolls in front of her, a black doll and a white doll. And they said to the Kurino Kendesi, pick up the doll which is more intelligent. She picked up the white doll. Pick up the doll who you think is going to get in trouble more. Picked up the black doll. Pick up the doll who's more pretty. She picked up the white doll. Pick up the doll that you think's more ugly. She picked up the black doll. And she's a black girl. And this is called conditioning. And this is happening to you. You might not have realized it. And this is happening to your children. And you have to realize, as a parent growing up in these westernized countries, you have to uncondition your children if you're putting them through the same schooling systems. This is why so many parents, not only Sikhs but non-Sikhs, mass level, are doing homeschooling. Because they've now suddenly realized, is everything in that school what I want my child to learn? And so you have to realize, this is why a lot of Sikhs in Canada and a lot of places have built their own schools, because they don't want that social conditioning for their children. And even up to 5-6 years ago, in the Canada schools, a lot of the rich families would say, we're not putting our kids into CASA schools because the education levels ain't as high as these private schools. Actually, CASA school in Vancouver is the highest education rates in the whole of BC now. But what happened is, when they put gender ideology into schools, all of them took their kids out of the private schools and put them in these schools. Because you have to think about, what is the schools actually doing to my child? And I'm telling you, a lot of your schools, and I'm going to teach you this in part 3 about how to make your kids super aspirational and super intelligent, a lot of your schools are dumbing down your children. They're dumbing your children down, because what they're doing is giving them too much irrelevant things that they don't need in life, and not allowing them to actually reach what their best potential is, or finding out what their best potential is. Does that make sense? Why, Guru? So the first thing you have to understand is realizing is what's happening to you and what's happening to your child. Are you really comfortable with who you are, or are you a compromised person who's just trying to survive in a Western capitalist country? Does that make sense? And then when you teach these children, you are the majority on this earth. Brown people are the majority. Actually, being brown is beautiful. Actually, being brown is good because you can spend more time in the sun. The Chari Gore have to put sunscreen all the time. And especially if they're ginger, they can't even spend much time in the sun. There's nothing wrong with being brown. The Gore go and get a tan. But they will look at you, and Gore are very clever with language. If a white person goes to another country, they call it expat. But if a brown person from another country comes here, they call it immigrant. Why is that white person not called an immigrant if he goes to another country? You see how language changes? And this is all about conditioning. And if you don't think that you are not being conditioned by the media and everything else, let me explain something to you. There's 2 wars happening at this time. You got one in Ukraine and one in Gaza. Do you agree? So one, you've got white people fighting white people, and the other one, you've got Jews fighting Muslims. And there's a massive Muslim problem, even I have issues with Muslims from my experience. But I feel sorry for Gazan people, children that are being killed. But what's happening is you're spending billions of your tax money going to Ukraine, and you can't even talk about it. If you're protesting about it, you're getting arrested. One is white people, one is brown people. This is how the world is working. But they are the minority, but what they do is they're projecting their whiteness on you. So growing up, all you've ever had is whiteness projected on you. So basically the news is read by white people. The people in power that you see are white people. Basically, the people in the movies are all white characters. But now what's happening is the world is changing so fast. World initiative badal raha hai. Even Netflix and Amazon are now realizing their biggest markets are China and India, and now they're putting brown characters in. Now they're putting Chinese characters in. Because they've realized the markets are changing. And the key thing for you as we go on in this course is you're going to realize your children have more opportunity on this earth than you will ever have. Because this earth is becoming more and more non-white. Because Gore are not having children. And because you might have compromised who you are to appease people, your children don't have to. And it's better for your children to be more comfortable in their own skin. So you need to be getting books for your children with characters that look like them. You need to be getting cartoons for your children with characters that look like them. Does that make sense? And we're creating them resources for you. So we've created Nishani TV. And now Nishani TV is Netflix for Sikhs. You can download it, it's £3 a month. It's basically YouTube content, but everything is Sikh friendly. So these kind of resources are there. There's hundreds of books now with all Sikh characters in it. Does this make sense? But do you understand what's happening to your child? How quickly your child gets conditioned. And you won't believe the amount of people that will say, and they love dressing up for weddings, and they love dressing up, and they love their Diljit Dosanjh, and they love all this stuff, and they're like, yeah, we love being brown, we love being Punjabi, or we love being Indian, if they're like, but let me tell you, the most sold product for females in India is Fair and Lovely cream. It is, isn't it? And so ultimately, psychologically, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਮਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਕੀੜਾ ਪਿਆ ਆ that there's something wrong with my skin. Does that make sense? And the best thing you can do for your child is to get that kira out. There's nothing wrong with your skin. You're very beautiful. You're very normal. And enjoy who you are. Does that make sense? And part of that is understanding this, is economics. If you understand economics, economics is all about currencies. So the UK has the highest currency on this earth. The UK pound is always worth more. Then you have the American dollar, so then you have the euro, then you have the American dollar, you have the Canadian dollar, Australian dollar. Yeah? And when we look at currencies. So the UK pound is always at the top in terms of a strong currency. Now, at the time of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the Nanak Shahi, which is our currency, was 15 times more than the UK pound. So when you read history and you realize these people would come and be in Maharaja Ranjit Singh's army, like General Allard, he was a French general. There was General Alexander, he went from America and he went to Punjab and he was a general in his army. Why did they go there? Because the best salaries were in Punjab. Because what was the Silk Road was doing that. All the trade from the world went through Punjab. How do you think gold went to Punjab? How do you think the gold of the Barsa went to Punjab? The way it went from Punjab, it came from South America. They stole it from the Incas and the Aztecs, and the Portuguese and the Spanish did. It went on ships to Spain and Portugal. They wanted sugar, spices, silk. That came from basically through the Silk Road, and that where it all came from China and all these places. Where did they meet in the middle was Punjab. It's where all the trading was done. As a result, Punjab got flooded full of gold. Do you understand? You came from the richest country on this earth, at that time, not these little pens, and you're basically, as people in Maharaja Ranjit Singh's Raj, your literacy rate was the highest on this earth. So BBR's literacy in Punjab was at 98%. Because Maharaja Ranjit Singh at all of that time, even in the philosophies, you see this in Muslims as well, is they basically say always educate your girls. If you educate your girl, you educate the whole family. So they used to push, and because they always thought Mughals could come every time, Every bend was trained in Shastra Vidya, and every train was trained with Gotgad. So they had worldly knowledge, and etc., and they had their Shastras knowledge. And that was across the board in Maharaja Ranjit Singh's. That was 200 years ago. That Punjab had a literacy rate of 98%. Today, UK has a literacy rate of 78.5%. America has 65%. Punjab 200 years ago was more educated than they are today. Okay, this is who you actually are. This is where you've come from. And then this day came along where all your family lineage totally changed. Everything in your family's changed. If this day had not come along, none of you guys would be living in West London. You guys will all be living in Punjab. You guys would regularly go to Darbar Sahib whenever you want. You'd be going to Keskar Sahib whenever you want. This was the day in 1846 where the Gore annexed Punjab. And that's why everything in your lives totally changed. So what happened was, when the Gore came, their centre was Calcutta. That was where they were. They only moved to Delhi later. And in 1 year, they took over all over India, but they never had a Panga with Punjab. Because they realised in 1 year, they've taken all over India. Maharaja Ranjit Singh can take over India in 1 year as well. But his dhyan is always... They waited 11 years until he passed away. Never had a Panga with him. Then even after he passed away, they waited another 11 years. But what they did, he thought his Raj would be fine. He had 7 sons. And some of them were very capable. But he also had people like Hari Singh Nalwa, Kali Phula Singh, etc. It was a very strong Raj. But what they did, the Gore, in them 11 years after he passed away, every 18 months they would assassinate another of his sons. And eventually, in them 11 years, they assassinated all his sons until the youngest one, Dalip Singh. And then they said, we're going to basically lease Punjab off you for 15 years, called the Amritsar Treaty, then we're going to give it back to you. Etc. Because we had the Anglo-Sikh Wars, which we won most of the Anglo-Sikh Wars, except for the last one where the Dogres did Gurdari with us. Because they were given Kashmir in return. As a result, if you had not had that day in 1846, most people probably don't even know this day in 1846. If you had not had this day, all your parents would all be living with their cousins. They would all be living it up. You guys would still be in the richest country on this earth. Because you were agriculturally strong. Punjab is actually a country of 80 million people. It would be one of the largest countries on this earth. And the next Punjab, which is Punjab. And even this Punjab originally had Haryana, Himachal Pradesh and Haryana as part of that Punjab. It went to Delhi. It was a massive country. And you look at the people that were fighting for Azadi, from your Udham Singhs to all of them, they weren't saying we were fighting for India. They were saying we're fighting for Sadar Desh Punjab. They were fighting for the freedom of Punjab. Because India only got created for administrative reasons by the British. It never existed as a country before. It was loads of little countries, and it was a conglomerate of countries. Does that make sense? And so Punjab was a country in itself. So when people talk about we want Khalistan, all they're saying is we want our Punjab back. Does that make sense? Waheguru? And so this is where everything in your life changed. You would not be dealing with all this kind of capitalism, you wouldn't be dealing with all of this. None of your parents would have been gone through all this psychological trauma and all of this stress and all of this others. And ਅਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਹਜੇ ਵੀ ਗੋਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਆ like I used to hear growing up in the Gore in the ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰੇ ਗੋਰੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਤਰੱਕੀ ਕਰ ਗਏ ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਰਹਿ ਗਏ. Now I realize that actually ਨਹੀਂ ਗੋਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਤਰੱਕੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤੀ ਗੋਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਬੜਾ ਹਾਲ ਆ and we are giving them too much credit and actually all the Gore did was loot us. And if you look at everything in UK, most of it was built in the Victorian era. And in the Victorian, before they the dollar down in England. And we were more advanced. If you look at the Champs-Élysées in Paris, you know where they got the idea of the tree-lined streets from? It's from Amritsar, because Guru Ram Das created that. People used to go to Punjab for ideas how to build European countries. But when they actually looted Punjab, so when that day, Lord Dalhousie, who's this guy standing here, he then went into the Lahore treasury. So Lahore is our capital. And if the difference between Lahore and Amritsar is about as far from Slough and Southall, that's how far they are. If you fly up from Amritsar airport, you will see the lights of Lahore. These were our twin cities. This was the centre of our power in Punjab. And in 1947, the Hindus made sure there was a line in the middle of it. Okay, I'll explain that afterwards why that happened. And what's happened is that your money was taken away, and 17 trillion of wealth was taken from Punjab and brought here. Okay, well, you know when the Gaurais say the Commonwealth, the sun never sets on the Commonwealth. That's because it starts from Canada and goes all the way down to New Zealand. But what did they get from Canada? They got liquor and beavers. What did they get from Australia? Nothing. That's why they used it as a jail. They used to send their convicts there. What did they get from the rest of Punjab? India? Nothing. Because there's hardly anything there. The money they got that built the Commonwealth, they got from Punjab. So when they say India is the jewel in the crown, it's not India is the jewel in the crown, it's Punjab was the jewel in the crown. And just like this hall, there were 7, because you get taught about the Koh-i-Noor Hira, there were 7 halls as big as this, full of just, because they are the powerhouse of India. And when he started documenting everything in the Lahore treasury, it said that he ran out of ink and paper. There was so much money there. There was so much sona there. There was so much, and it was armed for our Lord. It didn't even mean anything to our Lord. Let me explain to you. But how many of you guys here now think of yourselves as British? Would you class yourself as British? Because a lot of people will. And this is what colonization is all about. Is that you've been brainwashed to replace your existence as a sovereign entity and you're thinking to their sovereign entity. Because what they've done is made you the workforce by looting you and then making you not direct slaves but indirect slaves because you're their workforce. And part of that is changing your identity to making you think that you are them, but they're never going to accept you. That's why they say you're immigrants. You could be 2nd, 3rd generation. To them, you're still immigrants. Even like now, all these Gaurais, even like your Rishi Sunak and all, oh, we're British, we went from these posh schools and everything. And they're saying, no, you're brown, mate, you're not English. The reality is, you've been brainwashed into this thing and you're thinking that you're basically their sovereign identity. Actually, they're colonizers and you're the colonized. And what actually happened is, when I train my children, and everyone's done this course, when you walk around London, when you walk around Oxford, and you walk around all of this, you realise everything's been built in the Victorian era. And then when you walk around it, then you realise, oh, Victorian Albert Museum, Punjab paid for that. This building, Punjab paid for that. Oxford University was a bunch of huts until Punjab paid for it. Cambridge University, Punjab paid for that. It was your money, your wealth that built England. You are the ones that basically built this country. They looted you, and now they're telling you basically get out of this country. You're only here as a convenience to prop up the NHS, to prop up certain sectors in the economy, but you're a convenience. And don't ever think that you're British, because they will not accept you when it's convenient for them. And this is called the economics of the jib. The economics of the wallet. So basically, as far as they're concerned, if their wallet is full, they don't care how many of you guys are here. As soon as their wallet starts getting a bit smaller because the cost of living has gone up, and etc., and now he's got a better house than me, he's got a better car than me, then the politics of jealousy comes, then it's like, let's get rid of all these immigrants. Because I want that house, I want that car, I want that job, I want that business. Does that make sense? And then you realise, actually, your elders understood this far better than you because they experienced real racism. You experience superficial racism. Because you're here, where the British is still illegal to be totally racist. and it's against the law. Wait till you go to Australia. Australia has no political correctness. They are just rank racist in front of you all the time, because that's their culture there. And America is very similar like that. They have a totally weird relationship between race and human beings. And so realize there's no relationship between the colonizer and the colonized. There's only coercion. And this is my sorry, because as brown people, we have never really understood it, because they went through a far more extreme version of this. But the colonizer and the colonized, there's only room for forced labor, intimidation, pressure, police, taxation, theft, rape, compulsory crops, contempt, mistrust, self-complacency, brainless elites, degraded masses. There's no human contact. It just turned the indigenous into an instrument of production. And if you look at it, that's all you are. You are instruments of production. Does that make sense? Because you keep the economy going. And if you look at brainless elites, what do you think Zelensky is? What do you think Bhagwant Mann is? They're former comedians that have been put into power because it's convenient to make money off them. Does that make sense? They're puppets. And this is what's happening to us. And the thing, because we're Sikhs and we have this history and we have a marshal, the Gauri had a different experiment with us. They said, you can keep your Amrit, you can keep your Granth, you can keep your Kakas, but you still do what we tell you to do. And as they took away their religion, they took everything away. And because they did it different from us, we didn't understand exactly what's happening to us. And this is Lord Dalhousie. This is actual line in his diary after he took over the Lahore Treasury. He said, Governor General Dalhousie writes, our aim is the utter destruction and frustration of Sikh power, the subversion of its dynasties, the subjugation of its people. This must be done promptly, fully and finally. That Maharaja Ranjit Singh's children never have children. As a result, none of them ever had children. All the other Maharajas in India have got their palaces back, even though they just for show, after even 1947. But Sikhs are the one people that got nothing back. And it was all done because we are seen as the biggest threat to the British, and now we're seen as the biggest threat to the Hindus. Because why was India divided the way it was divided? It was two reasons. It wasn't divided by the Muslims. They will tell you that Jinnah divided, they wanted to create Pakistan. No, Patel did. Patel, the Gujaratis did. And what they did was, they realized, if we get India from the British, what's going to happen? Every time there's elections, it's going to be Hindus in power, then it's going to be Muslims in power. Hindus in power and Muslims in power. So how are we always going to have Hindus in power? So let's give them a certain part of the country, let's just throw them all there. So they created Bangladesh and they created Pakistan. Threw them there, and now what happens is, it's either BJP in power or it's Congress in power. Both are Brahmins. Does that make sense? So Brahman is always in power. Then the other thing that they did was, the second biggest threat to them after the Muslims is the Sikhs. So let's make sure that that place where we give them most of Punjab in there, but specifically we give them Lahore in there, so that is the capital, that's the intellectual powerhouse of the Sikhs, because 80% of Lahore was owned by Sikhs. It's where our universities were, it's where our itihas is, it's where Guru Arjan Dev Ji was Shaheed. And a lot of our history, there's more history on that side of Punjab than this side, because Nankana Sahib's there, Punjab there, etc. As a result, they divided you in half, basically partition, which we've never really recovered from. And as a result of that, we've always been this second-class citizen. And where Punjab was always the top and the richest part of India, we went from 1 to now we're at 13th, and Gujarat, which was 13th, is now number 1. And India is run by Gujaratis. Modi's a Gujarati, Adani's a Gujarati, Ambani's a Gujarati, they run it all. This is their policies. Does that make sense? And this is what happened to us. And they took away your Shastras and your Kede. So what the British did was, they took away your Shastras and they took away your Kede. Because what they did was, they took, if you are the most educated people in society, where 98% literacy, they sent this person called G.W. Leitner from King's University in London, And he was sent to Punjab to de-educate Punjab. Because if you want to turn people into the workforce, the first thing you have to do is get rid of their education. And so what he did was that we had Kede, and Kede, which means our puthiyan, our books, and they gave you 3 coins for your books, and 1 coin for your shastras. So your books were giving you 3 coins for it, and you had no choice. You just lost the Anglo-Sikh wars. And as a result, in all the pens, they got rid of all the Kede. Okay? And our Kede at that time were very different to the Kede we have now. And that's what Keda at that time. So we had this Keda, it's called Keda-e-Noor. And it's Jassa Singh Ahluwalia's Keda. And Jassa Singh Ahluwalia grew up in the house of Guru Gobind Singh. And this Keda, it was like a way of learning Punjabi and Gurmukhi. And if that child learned that Keda, by the age of 6, that child could be a Larivar Party of the Guru Granth Sahib. It was an education system that was designed from Guru Sahib's time, and it was carried on until Maharaja Ranjit Singh's time. Do any of you even know what Larivar Swarup is? Put your hands up. Yeah, so it's continuous of the thing. Can any of you be part of it? And think about it. And that boy, here is the Punjabi word. And it's all been changed. And what you've done is, they've changed it, because what it is at that time, if you learn from the Keda-e-Noor, every word you were learning while teaching that child Punjabi was a word from the Guru Granth Sahib. So as that child was learning Punjabi, they already learnt the vocabulary of the Guru Granth Sahib, so doing Path was very easy. It's only now Professor Verinder Pal Singh now redoing this research and trying to recreate this in our Panth. And that Keda-e-Noor, it was the most printed book in the whole of Punjab. There was 80 million copies. And they did such a good job, we can't even find a copy of it now. So you got these museums full of all this other stuff, but they made sure there was no Keda-e-Noor. And that was to break you from the Guru Granth Sahib, from the Larivar Swarup. And this was what they did. So they had mass fires in all these pens. They got all your Keda and they just burned them. This is what G.W. Leitner did. And as a result, your pens were full of highly educated people. The next generation is only if they could teach them what they could. Third generation is uneducated. Now most of your pen is uneducated. Do you agree? So you went through this process. And this is what colonization has done to you. And then do you know what they did with your shastras? They took 300 bullock carts of your shastras from Punjab, and they had an exhibition in Calcutta. This is actually a sketch drawing which I found in Glasgow University. And this is a sketch drawing of that scene, where they took all your Raj and they had a whole month's worth of exhibition in Calcutta to show we've now finished Maharaja Ranjit Singh's Raj. And they brought his throne here to London, that's why it's in the Victorian Albert Museum, to show that we have now basically done this. And this is basically your sovereignty coming to an end. This is when you control your own destiny coming to an end, and you have now become the workforce where you were Maharaja before. Does that make sense? And then, because what it is the British, their capital was Calcutta. They only moved to Delhi because they were scared of Punjabis. They were scared of Sikhs. And at that time, Delhi was on the border of Punjab because Haryana was part of Punjab. Does that make sense? So to keep an eye on these guys, because they're the ones. And what happened afterwards when it comes to independence? 80% of the Qurbani were. So they were right in that thinking, weren't they? When you have independence, it's because of these people. The Baki of India is compliant. Does that make sense? Why, Guru? Do you know what they did with your shastras? Anybody? They melted them down and they created Indian railroads. And even now, if you speak to Gauri, what did you do for India? Oh, we built the railroads. They didn't build the railroads for your feather. They built the railroads so they can loot you and basically bring it to England so they can build these Victorian buildings. And even this building, I won't be saying everything was designed to loot you. And this is normal for us. This is signs these are his other rings. That's his throne. Koh Hira means nothing. They hype it up now, and then the Gori brought it here, they couldn't even cut it right, and it's now a third of its original size. It was about that big originally. And then when you go into the, what do they call it, where they have it now? In Tower of London, yeah. Let me tell you, it was nothing. And this is the way Gori brainwash you. Remember I talked about immigrants and expats? If a Gora goes somewhere else, they're an expat. If a brown person comes here, they're an immigrant. Gori call themselves Great Britain. Have you heard the phrase Great Britain? Which country calls itself great? Have you ever heard of Great Australia, Great Nigeria, Great Scotland? No one else calls itself great. Actually, because I'm well-travelled around the world, England can fit in Lake Superior, which is one lake in Canada. That's how small England is. Their lakes are bigger in Canada than the whole of England is. But to project themselves onto other people, we're Great Britain. So when they go around the world, you must be like this, oh my God, they're Great Britain. This is how they project language on you all the time. And they make you beefcoof with language. And we just accept it. And the reality is, all of Great Britain, or all of England, and all of this only got built by looting Punjab. And Punjab was the jewel in the crown. Now, this is by Hira Singh. He's one of Maharaja Ranjit Singh's son. I saw this recently at an exhibition. Look at this. Look at the emeralds on that. You see that? That's just his kamakasa. It's the arm thing. You know that's worth about 80 million pounds. Just the emeralds. The emeralds are that big. This is just his kamakasa. This is arm. They were walking around like this all the time. Look at the way they were dressed. This is arm for them. Because they were the center of the Silk Road. They were the center of the world's economy. And you have to teach your children this. Otherwise your children will be thinking, Nate, I see those in Punjab in India, like I used to think. I used to grow up in UK thinking, these people are really backwards. And we're like brainwashed, oh, Gori are really like, oh my God, what a Gori are. And then you realize who we actually are. We were something amazing. We were the society where you didn't even have jails. Why did you not have jails in Punjab? Because no one stole anything. Why didn't they steal anything? Because people only steal to feed themselves. They could go to Gurdwara and have langar anytime they want. You know, our society was very sophisticated when we have Raj, but now we're so being bogged down, we're so being brainwashed down. You're the 2%, or you're the workforce, you're the immigrants, you're like this, you're like that, your skin colour's wrong. Now we can't even remember that Asi Raj Karte bhi humde si. And now you're struggling to become a British Sikh. You suddenly need to become a Canadian Sikh or something else. Does that make sense? Because you've forgotten who you actually were. Why is this important? Because the day you teach your children this, your children will not have identity crisis. And whether you accept it or not, most of us, including myself, we have grown up with identity crisis. And it's time that we stop doing that. Do you agree? And it's time that we create a generation that are very comfortable with their root. They're very comfortable with their skin colour. They're very comfortable with who they are. They're very comfortable with their roots. Does that make sense? And when you tell them your story, yeah, our story is tragic, but we're still resilient. We're still here. We can go through all this stuff, we can still repair it. But if you teach your children, you're always going to be the workforce, that's all you're going to be. But if you teach children, we were Maharaja, and we've been made into the workforce, but now we're going to become Maharaja again. Does that make sense? Because you guys are young. They asked me to speak for Sikhs nationally, and I've done lots of time where I've represented Sikhs. There was once this debate in London, and you guys might be a bit young, but there was this person called Norman Tebbit. He was a minister in Margaret Thatcher's government. And at that time, any of you guys remember Norman Tebbit? No, you probably don't, you're too young. And they had this thing about minorities, and they were saying there was a cricket test. And so basically what these Gore dreamed up, racist Gore, Margaret Thatcher government, was if the cricket is on, if you're a person, brown person, and you support India more than you support British, then there's something wrong with you. If a Muslim supports Pakistan more than they support England, there's something wrong with you. If a black person supports West Indies more than they support England, that all of you, if you want to live in this country, you have to support England. And so they had a conference about this because people were like, what the hell's this? And he called it, it's called the Northern Tether Test. So we had this big meeting in London, they actually televised it, and they had me representing Sikhs, they had a Hindu guy there, they had a Muslim guy there, and they were asking us, are you British? The conference is called Are You British? So they asked the Hindu guy, are you British? And majority of these Hindus, a lot of them are clueless about their religion because it doesn't make sense. It's just a Mahabharata. It's just a soap opera. So they don't understand their religion. So they're just like white people, brown people in white, in coconuts. So they goes, oh yes, we are British. We love being British. It's nice being here. And it's a very civilized society. Then they asked the Muslim, and the Muslim said, oh yeah, we have 57 countries, but unfortunately in some of our countries, more Muslims get killed, etc. We feel relatively safe here. There is racism here. It could get better, but it's still, we're quite proud to be British Muslims. So they asked me, and they said, are you British? I goes, I don't know. Tell me what being British is. And is it that you go to football, then you basically have fish and chips, and then you get drunk and do ulti on your toilet? And I goes, I don't know what British is. You have never explained it to me. And I goes, you say cricket and fair play, but where was your cricket and fair play when you did colonization? And you looted most of the world. I goes, I'm not British, I'm a Sikh. I live in this country, I pay taxes. As a result, I get services, I get education, I get healthcare because I'm paying taxes for that. But that doesn't mean you have the right to tell me what goes on in my brain and what I need to think. I'm not British, I'm never going to be British, because as a Sikh, we don't believe in nationalism of any country. We believe the human race is one. And as far as we're concerned, we shouldn't have these nationalistic borders. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm a Sikh, and jithe bhi assi rehne hain, Canada, America, UK, Australia, assi Raj karna hai. And they all started applauding me. And the Muslim said to me, that was a good answer, I should have said that. And the reality is that, are you confident? Can you actually say that? Or would you just say, no, I'm British? Because you just have to be that, even though you know all of this was done to you by them. Your lives had massive trauma, violence, disruption in your generations because of them. So that they could make this country now say to you, get out of my country. Or do you actually understand your story? You tell it to your children, and like I say to my children, we do very well in this country. I've taught my children, you are not British, you're global citizens, and you're going to travel, you're going to be a generation that can earn money from your laptops. You don't need to live here. As far as I'm concerned, AI is going to change everything on this earth, and people are not going to have to live where their jobs are. So people are going to go and live where they get the best weather, they get the best sangat, and they're going to earn money off laptops. As a result, Vancouver's going to explode. Toronto's going to explode, California's going to explode, the Midlands here is going to, and you're going to have these centres of Sikhi in different places where people just think, yeah, we got good sangat there, I can earn money there, I don't need to be next to Heathrow Airport, I don't need to be next to London, I don't need to be wherever. And that's how the world is going to evolve. Does that make sense? Yeah? Has that been helpful, this section? You now understand identity. You now understand your story. Now if I said to you, you're children of colonization, you now understand that. Because if you don't understand your story, how are you going to explain to your children? And your children are going to grow up like this. They're going to grow up the way you grew up, where you're a brown person who sometimes has to pretend to be a bit more white because you have to be part of that conversation. But then you come to the Gurdwara and you suddenly realize Sikh history, and you think, well, I actually like this stuff, but in my workplace, I have to be a bit more compromised. No, just be who you are. And I realized that at a young age, when I kept my gears, people taught me very differently when I was a munna, and I kept my gears, and I was actually more successful because I was more balanced in who I am, and my life just went up in a massive trajectory. And as a result now, I'm a boss, and I'm financially free, I'm comfortable, I'll go anywhere I want, whenever I want, I do what I want. Why? Because I created the mindset, I'm in control of my life, I'm designing my life. Does that make sense? If you don't develop that mindset, everyone else around you is going to define your life. Okay. Trajectory changed. And we never used to call them Gore. We used to call them Farangis. Have you ever heard that word, Farangis? It means the log jina koi rang nahi ka. The people that play hide and seek with the sun. That's what we called them. And Maharaja Ranjit Singh and Hari Singh Nalwa used to say, Farangiyan to pacho, inadi kiri mindset ya is not right. Did you know that Hari Singh Nalwa spoke 6 languages, and because he had to have a meeting with the Gore in one treaty, he learned English for 6 months before he went to that meeting. He never told them that he knew English, and he just sat there while talking in his other 6 languages, and when they were talking in English, he still understood everything that they said. But he never let them know that he could understand English. This is the kind of leaders we had. And this was the kind of thing, that's why we were unconquerable at that time. And now what they do, and you look at where we've gone, we've only gone where the British needed us. So basically, we went to California because they needed agriculture. Went to Canada, Vancouver, because they needed lumber. You went to UK because they were setting up the NHS, and they needed engineers. They went to Africa because they were building the railroads there. That's why a lot of Sikhs went there. They went to Singapore because they needed security, and as a result, Sikhs are policemen there. They're in front of all the hotels. They went to Hong Kong. Why? Because the population, they couldn't control them. So they took all these Sheikh Gabrus from Punjab and took them into Hong Kong, and they controlled the population. They suppressed them. And if you go to Hong Kong now, even if a Chinese person dies, on their grave they will have a statue of a Sikh face, because they say it keeps all the evil spirits away. This is where we were. Went to Australia because we were the ones that created agriculture, which is what their jail was. We are, so understand, you are a massive global diaspora. You have power. You've done things on this earth. Because the Gore, where does racism start? Racism starts because in schools, you are never taught real world history. You are only taught white supremacist history. Because they will tell you Captain Cook discovered Australia. No, he didn't. Brown people were already there. They're called the Aborigines, who originally came from India and Africa, and they settled there and became Aborigines. They will say Christopher Columbus discovered America. No, brown people were already there. There's 200 million of them, who had come from India and the other sides. Christopher Columbus wasn't even the first white guy that went to America, because the Vikings had gone even before him. But you were taught this in schools. Because you only taught what the Gore do. But if anyone else of any other colour, so if a Gore discover something, you would learn their name, like Marie Curie. But if they don't teach you that most of the chemistry you learn in schools comes from China. Most of the maths you learn in schools comes from Persia. Most of the psychology, the martial arts and everything else that you learn in schools comes from India. Even religion only comes from 2 parts on this earth. It comes from Middle East or it comes from North India. There's no religion that's ever come from Europe. No religion ever come from America or Australia. Hinduism, Buddhism and Sikhi comes from India. Christianity, Islam and Judaism comes from the Middle East. And they will say to you, have you ever heard the phrase first world country and third world country? Who decides what's a first world country? Who decides that? Because ultimately a first world country is where Gore are in control, even though they took that country of other people. So America and Australia are considered first world countries. Well, they'll teach you about the genocide that happened with Hitler, and he killed 6 million Jews. They will never teach you in schools the largest genocide on this earth was the 200 million tribes that were killed in America by the settlers, European settlers, where they killed all these massive tribes, and Apaches and Indians and Aztecs, all of them were wiped out. They don't teach you that in schools. So what you're taught is that you see how whiteness gets projected on you. And as a result, then you think, oh yeah, we control everything. You guys are the brown people. You guys that bring all the crime. You guys that bring everything else. You're dirty. You're all this stuff. ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਰੋਜ਼ ਇਸ਼ਨਾਨ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਹੱਥ ਨਹੀਂ ਧੋਂਦੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਟਾਇਲਟ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ, ਹੈਨਾ? So you understand that? It's all projected on you. And so you have to say to your children, no, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm very normal. And ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੋਈ problem ਹੈ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਬੁਰਾ ਹਾਲ ਹੈ. Does that make sense? Okay. Right, and so now we think we've done a lot of taraqi because this is us here now. We're all these people that are established in these Western countries. But actually, remember what I said to you, that the billionaires want good weather, organic food and time. The people that understand that concept, they're fighting for your kids. They're fighting for your lands in the protests. And you look at in that farmers' protest, most people were old people. Because the young people have all come out. And they were still fighting. A year later, I was doing daily updates at that time on the farmers' protests. I had 100,000 people reading my daily updates every day. And at that time, these people understand the value of your kids. Because if you don't have kids in Punjab, if everyone sells their land, where do you think the langar of the Barsebs comes from? My Babaji, when we had harvest, the first thing he would say, Dasma is Darbar Sahib. And that would go to Darbar Sahib. It showed the swan that keeps all that going. And if we don't have Punjab, we don't have kids, everyone's selling their lands because they want to buy more houses in Southall or Toronto or Vancouver, that's all Bahia going to take over everything, and that's it. That's the end of Darbar Sahib. That's the end of all this stuff. You know? So you have to realise, and the people that fight for your Qawm, like Jagtar Singh, Gwara, Amritpal, they're all put in jails. Because they're standing up for what your actual place is. You can pretend to be British, you can pretend to be Canadian or American. Ultimately, one day you will realise you are Punjabi, you are Sikhs, or you're from Afghanistan, or you're from these places. That's who you are. Because it doesn't matter how much taraqi you do, you've built all these Gurdwara. Look at this Southall. You've got Gurdwara on this side of the road, you've got Gurdwara on that side of the road, and you've got Gurdwara behind you. And you think you've done a lot of taraqi, you will never be able to build Darbar Sahib. You will never be able to build Keskar Sahib here. You will never get the Ruha of Fatehgarh Sahib here. You will never get that because it's special about that dharti. And I'm born here, and I know when I went to Baba Bakale and I sat there and started doing Simran, I've never felt that much shanti ever in my life. It was just something special about the place where Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji did bhakti. You will never experience these things ever in these Western countries. My kids go and travel with me. I go to America a lot at the moment because they have a lot of demand for this course. And my kids, when they go there, they say, we don't feel like doing bhakti here, there's too much bark on this country. And I have to explain that, because they do Amritullah, they're very strong in their Amritullah, my kids. And they'll say, there's too much meat here, there's too much alcohol here, there's too much drugs here, it's affecting this dharti. And when you go to Punjab, they say, no, this dharti is good. And you feel that, the more spiritually you become, you will realize that there's something about dharti and your soul. And you are naturally designed for certain types of dharti. Okay? And so, ultimately, when they talk about gulami, this is what gulami is. Don't just think that these people in slavery are gulami. You're in gulami of capitalism. You're stuck in a lifestyle where all you're trying to do is pay mortgages, pay your taxes, pay everything. That's gulami in itself. And the only way you're going to get out of that gulami is by buying assets. Okay, does that make sense? Has that been helpful, that section? Have you learned something there? Okay, so now let's start looking more at families. So Jira Naam Japadaya Oda Vada Parvarya, which means if you actually want to survive here, you've got to stop thinking that you are individual families here in Southall or West London. You've got to start thinking of yourself as one big family. Because if one of your kids becomes a drug dealer, who's he going to sell drugs to? All the other kids here. So ਜੇ ਗੁਆਂਢੀ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਅੱਗ ਲੱਗੀ ਆ, ਖੁਸ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਦਿਨ ਉਹੀ ਅੱਗ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਘਰ ਆਉਣੀ ਆ. Does that make sense? So you have a collective responsibility of all the kids here. Does that make sense? And so you got to start thinking like that. So here's a BB. This BB went to Toronto. And this BB, she got a job as a maid. And the guy in Toronto, where she got a job as, he was a top Muslim scholar at the University of Toronto. And I went to a Ranswai in Toronto about 10 years ago, and there was Muslim protesting outside the Gurdwara. I thought, that's strange. Why are these people protesting at the Gurdwara? You don't see that often. And then they told me what happened. So this BB was working in this guy's house, and she would be a maid. She would come there in the morning, pick the kids up, give them breakfast, drop them off at school, and then once she's dropped them off at school, come back, and she would basically do all the housework, and do all the cleaning and everything, pick the kids up from school, give them food, then go home. That was her duty. And the husband and wife had this like top jobs. He was a scholar, a university lecturer. And then the Muslim philosopher thought, professor thought, oh, this Bibi, she's got a lot of sage. I want to bring her into Islam. If I bring into Islam, I'll bring loads of other Sikh Bibi into Islam. So he started thinking about how I'm going to convert her. And he started trying to convert her, so every time he knew she was going to do cleaning here today, he would leave a leaflet there on Islam. Or he would leave, or sometimes when he's home, he would start a topic with her. Oh, do you know Islam's the best, fastest growing religion in the world? That's a marketing trick. It's not the fastest growing religion in the world. Football is the fastest growing religion in the world. There's actually mass level people leaving Islam, especially in North America and the Middle East and everywhere. You will get more fundamentalist Muslims in London than you will get in the Middle East. They're actually going away from it, and at a mass level, even in Saudi Arabia, everything's changing there. But here in London, funny story for you, going on a tangent. I did this course in East London. I had 3 Muslim people in this course. I've had loads of Hindus, Muslims, Gauri come to this course, and one of them's from Morocco. And she goes, my kid goes to Artham Academy, and he wants to become a saint. And she's from Morocco, but she goes, my husband, he was very sensible, we had a really good marriage, and then we moved to East London. He now goes to the mosque, and now he's trying to control me all the time. And at the end of this course, I realised that he's a better way for my children and me than basically Islam. So things are changing like this all the time, and everyone's got these marketing tricks that they put into your minds. Oh yeah, Islam's the fastest growing religion. Guru Nanak Dev Ji was a Muslim. And the reality is they're just marketing. They're desperate for you to convert, because as far as they're concerned, they can do any takam they want in their life. If they get one non-Muslim to convert to a Muslim, they're going to go to Jannah. So it's like, oh, basically it's easy way out. Let's just convert people and then carry on doing all up and take up. Whereas our philosophy is very different. It's all about your Atma and Paramatma. Okay? Why, Guru? So occasionally he would start a topic with her. Oh, do you know this about Islam? Do you know about that about Islam? And then one day he got frustrated because he's this big philosopher, he's this linguistic expert. Everyone listens to him at the university. Why is this old lady not listening to me? And he started saying to her, do you know this about Islam? Do you know that about Islam? And you should read the Quran. And so the Bibi, before she would always just say Waheguru. But then that time she said, what? Sheikh Farid ji bhi naam japanna piya si. But Kabir ji bhi naam japanna piya. Tumi kadi jaisa paat kar liya kar. She said that to him. And he got a bit shocked. He's not used to people talking to him like this. Who is this old lady telling me to do this? But it stuck a chord on him. So he went to his computer and he Googled Japji Sahib. And he started reading it. And because he understood linguistics and language, he understood what was written there. Started reading it more. Within a year, he'd done a whole search part. Within 2 years, he took Amrit and all his family took Amrit. Okay, now what is the moral of the story? If he was trying to do that with me, I could tell him 5, 6, 10 things about Muhammad and get into a proper debate with him. Muhammad married a 6-year-old, he consumed the marriage of 9-year-olds. Quran was not even written by Muhammad, no one even knows who wrote the Quran. I could get into a whole thing. But the difference with that Bibi was that she had a jivan. And a jivan means that she had a spiritual presence about her. And that spiritual presence changed him. And if you want to protect your family, and you want to put your family in a good place, the second lesson of the Sikh parenting course is build your jivan. If you have a spiritual presence in your house, everything in your house will be fine. If you have no spiritual presence in your house, everything in your house is open to regards, which means lust, anger, greed, attachment, ego. Does that make sense? And so the key thing here is, let's analyze our children. You will often only... Sometimes children are so intelligent, parents will look at me. So your parents, he comes home, they come from school, your mum might be busy in the kitchen or doing various things, housework, or basically that's the thing, and the dad might be in front of the TV or on his phone or everything, and the child knows they're not looking at me, but they're all going to start looking at me. So your children are not normally naughty, they do that to get your attention. Does that make sense? Because some people, they'll come to me and they'll say, oh, Jagjit Singh aa gaya, sade camp te Jagjit Singh aa gaya. And some of the parents will come, Bhai sahab, mere bache na jarur gal kar lo, bahut elta kar deya. And I will say at the beginning of the camp that basically, ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬੱਚੇ elta ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਨਾ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਰੋ, because that's normal for children. They should be doing elta. They should be pushing the boundaries. That means that the marks are working right. The people that do elta today are going to be your community leaders of the future. They're going to be your business people of the future. They're going to be your prime ministers of the future, because the marks are working right. It's the children that are quiet you should be worried about, because that means there's something wrong in their brains. Why are they not being inquisitive? Why are they not being loud? Why are they not pushing the boundaries? Does that make sense? And we have this wrong concept, je koi bacha aida bethaya like a robot, that kid's good and the other kids are wrong. No, that means there's something wrong with that kid. Unless they're spiritual, where they will automatically find their sage, otherwise that kid's either got zero confidence, or there's too much arguing in that house, or there's something wrong in terms of that kid's got some kind of kira in his mind that you need to get out to basically get him out of his shell. Does that make sense? So, the key thing is you recognize your children when they're naughty, but we don't recognize the key virtues around them. And then we are the first people that teach our children Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Monkar. Lust, anger, greed, attachment, ego. Does that make sense? Okay, so we teach our prejudices to our children, and everything that comes out of your mouth becomes your child's brain. And so if you're man, remember I said the day you have your first child, the behavior in your house has to totally change. Because if you're carrying on doing the same behavior after you've got that child, you're now damaging your child. I'll give you an example. I was in a town and I was doing a talk, and they invited me around afterwards because they got problems with their kids, and I wanted me to talk to the kids. And I realised the mum saying to the baby, the little child running around, Bandarjia, Bandarjia. What's the child saying? Bandari, Bandari. And it's like, because she's now set the tone of the language in the house. And that's what the kids then repeating, because kids, that's what they'll be. What's coming into their mind, they repeat. And this is why it's really important. You've got to realise what comes out of your mouth is creating the brain of your child. So Maharaj is giving you this perfect child. 9 months, that child's been inside of you. This is why mothers always have a stronger bond with their children, because it's part of you. It's part of your body that's walking around. Does that make sense? Grown in you. Now, that child is a perfect marker. Has anybody here ever seen an ugly baby? Anyone ever seen an ugly baby? No, because there's no such thing as an ugly baby. All babies are beautiful, aren't they? And even if you get the most patthar dil person, stone-hearted person, and you put a baby in their laps, they will start smiling, isn't it? Because that baby is so much purity. That baby is perfect. No meaning that baby is just unsimmering with you. Here's another tip for you. If you have a young child in your house, Punjabis do this thing, they put the baby on and they start tapping the back. And they say, jab ja, jab kar ja, or they say, don't do that. Just put the baby on your shoulder and just do, guru, and the baby will go quiet straight away. Because that's all the baby's heard inside you, and all that baby needs to hear is Bible. Because that's what they're hearing. It's perfect. And it's been given to you as a blessing from a Kalpurk. And this is most of our lives. Asi aajanne, asi chal jane. Gurbani tells us, Jo aaya so chal si, sabko aayi variye. So basically, I can tell your life on 4 fingers. Your life is you're born, you grow up, you have children, they grow up, you die. It's a bit crap, isn't it? This is our lives. And for millions of people on this earth, this is your life. But some people do amazing things like Baba Deep Singh and Mata Pakur, and 400 years later we're still remembering them. And that's the difference between being just like another person, jira aa gaya, chal gaya, and a person who's built their genes. Does that make sense? It's about what are you doing for the Qawm. So, let's read this shabd. 1 minute.
बरस बाल बन बीते 20 बरस कछ तप न कियो 30 बरस कछ देव न पूजा 30 बरस कछ देव न पूजा फिर पछताना विद करो फिर पछताना विद करो मेरी मेरी करते जन्म गयो मेरी मेरी करते जन्म गयो मेरी मेरी करते जन्म गयो मेरी मेरी करते जन्म गयो.
So this is how Gurbani works. Gurbani is like arrows that hit your soul. So here's a shabd. The shabd is saying that your 20s are gone, your 30s are gone, your 40s are gone, and your life is going, and all you're doing is meri, which means, can I have more? Can I have more? Your greed. I want to get this, I want to get that, and then suddenly you realize a lot of this stuff is of no value. It's like, I've got multiple degrees. I'm sure most of you guys gone through the education system. How much of the education system do you actually use afterwards in life? There's always at different stages of your life, you think, can I get this and my life will be fine? Can I get this and my life will be fine? The reality is, if you do good things in your life and you basically work hard and you basically do the things, your life is going to be fine anyway. But we're constantly doing meri, and we forget one of the key reasons why we're here. And as a result, what we're doing is, the key things in your life, like your children, you become absent parents. The key things in terms of value systems in your house, we don't discuss that because we're more interested in our rental properties or more interested in other things, and therefore we not put the right things in our house. So here we're going to look at our children. So again, watch my hands. So when Maharaj gives you a child, O Bhagwan Da Rupya, which means it's the like God. Do you agree with that? And now as that child grows up, it's now when it's 15, 20, 30 years old, that child realizes, in my teenage years, मैं झूठ भी बोल सकता हूं, मैं चलाकियां भी कर सकता हूं, मैं गालां भी कट सकता हूं. So जेड़ा भगवान दा रूपिया has now become a shaitan. That basically I can do all this but take up. And then that bacha, that person realizes, by the time they get to their 30s and 40s, all that bad behavior and puttekam actually didn't benefit me. It's better I just become a human being. And they're trying to heal themselves from everything they did in their teenagers in the 20s. And so they become what we call a Jangai Insan. Now, if they have good karmas before they die, they try to become Bhagwan the Roop again. Does that make sense? And that is the cycle of life. Now, the key thing in the parenting course is, if you are good parents, you will take that bacha, which is Bhagwan da Roop, you will never let it become a shaitan. Instead, by giving it good parenting, you'd make him straight as a good insan. And because you made him a good insan straight away, that child has a better life before they die of becoming Bhagwan da Roop again. Does that make sense? And that's what this course is all about. It's about you getting you to think, what am I doing with this child? What is my relationship with this child? So let me understand, this is called the cycle of influence. Now this is the biggest reason why we have place in our families. The reason you have place in your families, the reason you have place in your families is because often you have, most of our families have 3 generations. Okay? But you've got, because of the migrant experience, what you call 3 generations here that have completely different value systems and life experiences. So the grandparents have spent most of their lives in Punjab and have only come here now. Then you've got middle generation, half their lives in Punjab and half their lives here. And then you've got the new generation, which is all born here. Do you agree? And because you've got 3 different value systems and life experiences, you've got 3 different mindsets about what life is. And then we try and put them in the one house, and then we say, why can't they get along? But you have to understand, you've got 3 different mindsets there. So how does this work? So let me give you a scenario. Scenario is, you go into the Gurdwara, and the mum says to daughter, Put, suit wala, apa Gurdwara chal rahe hain. And the daughter says, why do I want to wear a suit? Why can't I wear trousers? Why can't I wear jeans? Why can't I wear a top? And then grandma walks in ਇਹ ਵਾਈ ਕਾਤੇ ਕਰਦੀ ਆ? ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਕਦੀ ਵਾਈ ਕਿਹਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ, ਤੂੰ ਨਿਆਣੇ ਨੂੰ ਕੁਛ ਸਿਖਾਉਂਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ, ਐਵੇਂ ਬੋਲੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਰਹਿੰਦੀ ਆ. You see that as a scenario in a house? Yeah? Do you agree? Yeah? That's a scenario in a house. Now, why does these scenarios happen? So let me explain to you what is happening here. It's all about your cycle of influence. Now, put your hands up if you spent most of your life or you were born in, or you were educated in Punjab or India. Okay? Now put your hands up if you're educated in the West. Okay? Without you realizing, your mindsets are very different depending on where your education is. Okay? Because that's what designs your mindsets. So what happens in Punjab or India, their education, I'm not saying that Indian or Punjab education system is bad, because they actually produce more graduates than the whole of Europe every year. And their education system is quite strong. I know that's why they're coming in, taking all the jobs, like Tommy Robinson says. So what actually happens there, if you get educated in India, the education system is called Ratta, which means to repeat. So what the better your grades are. Does that make sense? And therefore that person is a person of authority. Now if you do education in the West, no one cares about the teachers. No one cares about the teachers. They care about the content. And you are taught a system not of ratta, you are taught a system of analysis. And therefore you are basically taught, this is your content, analyse this, and as a result, the more you analyse this, the better your results are. Do you agree? So as a result, one is a system of repetition, one is a system of analysis. Now the first thing you do in analysis is you say the word why, isn't it? So then bring that back to a family scenario. You bring this back to a family scenario. The thing in a family scenario is their cycle of influence. If you're born in India or you've come from Punjab or various other places, Afghanistan, etc., you basically have a cycle of influence in your family. It could be 30, 40 years. Now I'm born here, my parents are still alive. If my parents say something to me, we will still say Satvajan. And at Kikya, you've said something, we'll just do it. Because we respect you. Do you agree? Even though I'm born here, we have that, they have that influence because we respect them in that way. But what actually happens is, so that person from India, that cycle of influence is 30, 40 years. So they will decide what kind of kapre you wear, what school you go to, who your friends are, where you get married, what job you do, etc. Isn't that what happens there? So that they always need a person of influence in their house and they listen to that person of influence. Now, your children did not decide that you're going to come and live in a westernized country. They didn't decide that. You decided that. And by coming in a westernized country, the first thing your child is always going to say is why. The problem is, for the people there, saying why means disrespect. Because it means you're questioning my decision. I made a decision. Why are you not automatically just answering it? You just say Satvajan and get on with it. And so we have to realize in our families, if you are coming to westernized countries, the grandparents and the parents, if you say something to your child, the first thing you should expect is why. And just because your child says why, it doesn't mean I'm disrespecting you. I'm just asking you why. Does that make sense? And this is where most families break down. And the thing we teach in the parenting course, if you're living in Western countries, expect why from your children and learn to become a good communicator with your children. Yeah? You've got to learn how to talk to your children. No, that's not acceptable. So let's go through that scenario again. So your daughter is saying, why do I need to wear a suit? Why can't I just wear, why can't I wear jeans? Why can't I wear this? And you're going to say, what? The reason I want you to wear a suit is because you... Let me basically cover our body from Moda to Goda. Because like I'm covering myself from Moda to Goda. And as a result, I'm fully covered. It doesn't matter what my body shape is. It doesn't matter. They all look exactly the same because your clothes are like that. But if you have westernized clothes, and I'm going to come on to this in part 3, about why it's harder to buy clothes for girls than there is for boys. Anybody here got a daughter? Okay, this is going to be very important for you because girls' clothes are designed very different to boys' clothes. And what you find is boys' clothes are just like boys' clothes. Always getting smaller and smaller and smaller and tighter and tighter and tighter. Because the westernized thinking is nangiya karo from moda to goda. So it's all about how can we emphasize her breast shape more? How can we emphasize her back shape more? How can we make that lower in the waist? And nangiya kari jande. And as a result, more and more girls get anorexia and bulimia, and then basically you have the auntie and the godwara, and you've got a constant this pressure on all your girls that you have to have this perfect Aishwarya Rai Bollywood thing, otherwise there's something wrong with you. And the reality is that all human beings come in different shapes and sizes. Some are tall, some are wide, some are big. And actually, that Aishwarya shape is actually very unhealthy because she's got no muscle mass. And actually, if you've got big hips and you're wide, your children are going to be more genetically healthy. And what we're doing is brainwashing our children in a totally messed up way. Instead, why don't you just cover yourself from Moda to Goda? I'm stopping you being brainwashed by society. And if you look at who are designing these clothes, they're often bande in their 30s, 40s and 50s who are perverts. They're the people that are designing these clothes that are making gunya more and more nangiya. I'll come more to this in part 3 because I'll show you all the statistics about this. But then you think that makes sense. And when you explain to your child something like that, your child will think, actually that does make sense. I've never really thought about that because I just wear what my school friends wear, and actually wearing a suit is actually quite nice. Does that make sense? And so it's all about communication. And you have to understand, if you're living in Western countries, so I'm working in healthcare, and all of you heard of the British Medical Journal? So that's a magazine for doctors, so we get that regularly. And I remember 10 years ago, I read this study, it's called The Cycle of Influence, where they study children in Western countries. And this is their results. They said, if you take a child in a Western country, from the age of 0 to 2, the center of that world is the mother. And if the mother even leaves the room, bacha rona panda hai. But by the age of 2, that child loves their mother, but they're bored of mother because they've had 2 years of mother. So then between the age of 2 and 5, it's the father. Because you'll always want to be with the mother, but the father's now interesting. What words does he use? And that becomes their words. That becomes that child's behavior. But then westernized children, by the age of 13, become independently minded. Now this is very important. Because those of you in India, you're 34 years old and you're not independently minded. Your parents still control your decision making. But westernized children, by the age of 13, they're independently minded. Which means whoever they respect the most, that's who they follow. So you look at the posters on their walls. If it's some basketball players, football players, that's who they're respecting at this moment in time. If it's some guys, singers, you're the Zee Dosanjh or you said the Musawala, that's who they're respecting at the moment. And if you put them in Sangat and it's Gursikhs, they'll have Gursikhs pictures all over the walls. Because that's who they respect at this moment in time. Remember I said to you at the beginning, tell me something interesting about you. If you don't even think you're interesting, at the age of 13, how is your child going to think you're interesting? Does that make sense? And you've got to become interesting, because if you don't, at the age of 13, if your children see hypocrisy in you, they will just say, like we were growing up, and I had good parents, but I used to look at some of my resadars, and they used to go to these weddings and basically get drunk and then have punch-ups. And it's like, yeah man, what kind of bande are these? And you think, and you find children of people that drink a lot, 2 things happen to them. Either they drink a lot, or they never touch drink. Because of their childhood experiences around alcohol. And so after the age of 13, your children are only going to listen to you if you inspire them. If they respect you as a person. If they don't, they're going to find someone outside the house they're going to listen to more, and that person is going to influence your child. And most parents, this is where they struggle. They have their own personality flaws, their children have stopped listening to them, and they say, "Sade bache aakhe nahi lagde wan." No, it's because they're not inspired by you. They don't respect you as a human being. And your relationship with your child is then become कि basically मैं उन्हें कार देना है, मैं उन्हें कपड़े देना है, मैं उन्हें खाना देना है, and etc. And then that's it. And then as soon as your bachcha can buy their own house, their own kapre, their own gaddi, their own khana, they don't need you anymore. Does that make sense? But if you're a parent that gives your bachcha kar, kapre, khana, but most importantly, summer, time, then your bachcha will always want to be with you. And this is why the key thing you got to get out of your mindset, which happened in the previous generation, ਅਸੀਂ ਹੋਰ overtime ਕਰ ਲੈਣੇ ਆ. We can buy these fancy suits, we can go to Punjab, we can go to these weddings and throw notes in the air and basically tell everyone how rich we are, even though you're actually cleaning toilets here for your job, because it's all about the kava. And then you basically brainwash people in Punjab thinking, oh my God, what is actually out there? So we can spend 30,000 of our own money basically trying to find what's actually here, and here lies here. There's actually racism, crap jobs, no minimum wage is crap, and life is crap because we fold them a full supana. And that suits and that extra overtime meant because your kids spent all their time in front of the Xbox and now they're socially awkward. What you have to do is bring balance in your house. We have done this wrong kind of messaging because it's all about the kava. It's all about telling other people, you know, our lives are great, and the reality is nobody's lives are really that great unless they've got a guru-centric life, unless they've got some kind of support, parallel system, value system that is basically giving a pillar to their life and it's a pedestal for their life. Does that make sense? That's what Guru does. The difference in people that don't have Guru in their life and the people that have Guru in their life is the person that has Guru in their life is like someone putting their arm around you and being with you all your life, and the other person's walking alone. Because that person who has Guru in their life can at any time have someone to talk to, because someone to take a phone number from, someone to give them support and structure in their lives. Does that make sense? So understanding this is very important, because this is the main reason most families have clears, is they don't understand how generations work and they're not good communicators with their children. And this is what you have to change in your houses. You have to become good communicators with your children. You have to explain why do we do things in a certain way, and then it makes sense to the children. Now watch this video.
Looks like rain again today. Dark clouds gather and fill the sky. Don't know how to talk to you, just know how we say goodbye. Go back where you came from. Go back where you came from.
So children see, children do. So one person being racist in the car, one person swearing at someone in the car, the child thinks they're swearing. Mother's walking around with a cigarette, the child thinks I'm going to grow up, I'm going to have a cigarette. One person doing ulti on the floor after getting drunk, the child thinks I'm going to do that growing up as well. Some people are racist, the child realizes they can be racist. One's beating up his wife, the son realizes I can beat my mum up, I can beat my wife up later. What your children see is what your children do. And then in the end, someone's helping someone, and the child starts helping. Remember I said to you, your children are just like Kali Kagaj. They're just blank papers, it's what you put on there. That's what your child becomes. Make your influence positive. Because the key thing for us is we want our children to be like this. But your children are only going to be like this if you're like this. And the reality is ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਘਰਾਂ 'ਚ ਕੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ? Because everybody in front of Sangat can become really nice. oh yeah, everyone, Hanji, Hanji, Satwachanji, Vaiguruji, etc. Then at the workplace, they're spraying their heads off. Because the reality is that basically, that many people have two faces. And the reality is, this is what Guru Sahib is saying, don't do that. That's called dugda. You should have one face. That's why Gurbani says, Jira Jinman Hor Mukhor. And this is the reality how most people live on this earth. But your children won't. They will see that because they're in the house with you. You cannot fool your children. That's why you can't ever do chalaki with your guru, because your guru sees everything. And so the key thing here is make your influence positive. The children shows how quickly children mimic our behavior, and children always pick up your bad habits before your good habits. If you swear, your children will learn how to swear. If you lie, if you drink or smoke, the children will think, when I grow up, I'm going to do that as well. If you are angry, your children learn how to speak in anger. So remember when we started this talk, I talked about innocence and masumiyat. You basically, if you've lost your innocence, why are you destroying your children's? Does that make sense? And we have to realize as parents, we can do this. As people, even older brothers, cousins, etc., you can destroy because you've lost your innocence, you've lost your value system, you've lost your behavioral boundaries, and then you're doing that to the next generation. And so we're draining it. So when we look at Guru Gobind Singh, we think of Guru Gobind Singh basically as created Amrit, 10th Guru, etc. And we have all these titles for Guru Gobind Singh. So let's look at him differently. Put your hands up if you're a father. Anybody here a father? So if you need a role model, your role model is Guru Gobind Singh. Put your hands up if you're a mother. If you need a role model, your role model is Mata Sahib Kaur. And if you're a grandparent, your role model is Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji and Mata Gujri. Okay? So let's analyze their parenting. So Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji was an amazing warrior. His name was Tyagmal. At the time of Guru Har Granth Sahib Ji, he fought in the battles of Guru Har Granth Sahib Ji. He was this amazing warrior, and then he realized his calling was to go to Baba Bakali and go and do bhakti, while the other Guru Sahibs were doing their seva, and he was preparing himself for the future. So he went there and he did bhakti for over 22 years in Baba Bakali. Now you will hear about that, but they won't tell you. Because Mata Gujri didn't say, I'm going to go and watch a Star TV natak, while he just sits there. She was doing bhakti with him. And people often say to us, in camps and everything, how do you create a good Sikh child? And the way you create a good Sikh child is 20 years before that child is born. If 20 years before that child is born, the father and the mother are already doing their bhakti. So I say that you start your children spiritually when they're young. They're already doing that bhakti. By the time they're married and by the time they have children, they've already got that immense spiritual power inside of them. And look at that, 22 years of doing bhakti at Baba Bakale. What was the result of that bhakti? When they too, Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji and Mata Gujri had a child, it was Mard Agambara. Mard Agambara means the greatest human person to ever walk on this earth. The greatest Mard. The greatest warrior, the greatest person to ever walk on this earth was Sahib Sri Guru Gobind Singh Ji. He was a poet supreme. He understood 52 languages. He basically was a warrior. He was a spiritualist. On every level of life, he invented instruments of music. And on every level of life, he was the greatest of them all. That's who Guru Gobind Singh Ji was. That was a result of his bhakti. Of Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji and Mata Gujri's bhakti, he was a result of that. And the same way, the result of his bhakti, his children were the Jal Sahibzade. And this is how you create spiritual bhakti. And that's why you find the houses that do a lot of bhakti, Sikhi goes in them from piriyan to piriyan. Even Gurbani says that, je tusi hon naam japde ha, e piriyan to piriyan bhi inside of you. So even if one or two go astray, like I said to you, my great-grandfather was Shaheed for the Panth. He was a Babur Akali. My parents, so that was my great-grandfather. My grandfather was in Sikhi. My father in the 60s, he cut his gears. After 84, he kept his gears, came back into Sikhi. I was a Munna, grew up with no gears. By the time I'm basically 18, I've come back into Sikhi. Because that Sikhi is already in your family from Piriyan to Piriyan. Even if you go astray, you will always come back. Does that make sense? And this is why you have to do bhakti, not just for now, but for your future generations. Does that make sense? Nahi to tusi sareyan ne khillar jana. I went to Stockton. You will hear about Kartar Singh Srabha and the Ghadar party. They basically went back to India to fight for independence. What they won't tell you, it was 19,000 Punjabis went back to Kartar Singh Srabha. Not just him, there weren't just like 20 of them went back. 19,000 established rich people in California, Sikhs, went back to fight for independence. They won't tell you that, they'll tell you Gandhi boy. I think Gandhi didn't buy it, he was just conveniently there as a puppet for the British. It's basically the whole Babbar Akalis, the layers and everything, it was all done by Punjabis. And I said to them when I was in Stockton, can I meet someone from them families? And there was a policy in America where if you were from India or you from China, you could never bring your wife over. You couldn't bring any female over. So a lot of the people in California had to marry Mexican women. Because they were the only people that looked like them. And as a result, they destroyed their culture. Even recently, like the Dar Singh Banks, he's known as the Peach King of California. He owns like 100,000 acres in California. He was married to a Mexican woman. Because that only changed recently. This is how Gore policies have all affected you all the time. And their families kill it again. They're walking around in Stockton like Gore. They don't even know that we used to be Sikhs 3 generations ago. That could be the same thing could happen to your future generations here. They'll just be known as Londoners. That's the reality, isn't it? If you don't keep your Sikhi value system or your Sikhi education or your bhakti in your family is going to become like, and that's what America is built on. America is built on the melting pot. That you get people from all over the world. A majority of American population from the Pilgrims is German. Then you have the Irish. Then you have the Dutch, etc. And now they call themselves Americans. Because that's what America is, a patila, and you put a few gajar in there, a few gande in there, a few something else, and you get this soup, and that soup is called being American. And the reality is, you're not like them kind of people. You have granths, you have history, you have bhakti, you have amrit, you have kakars. You have something of value. Do you know that you have the greatest history on this earth? Do you know that? Most of you don't even know that. So let me give you an example. You went to school here. So you studied history in school. Tell me someone from British history that you respect. Well, that isn't great, is it? Did you study Henry VI? Was it Henry VIII? No, Henry VI and his six wives or something? Henry VIII and his 6 wives. Did you study that at school? That was useless, wasn't it? You can't think of anybody in British history that you respect. Tell me someone from American history that you respect. Some people might say Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, but they fought against the system. No one else from American history that you respect. Don't you think that's odd? You know, 1,000 years of history UK has. America's got 150 years of pilgrim history, but they basically had thousands of years of history. You can't even find one person that you respect. You tell me someone from Sikh history that you respect. You straight away, Das Gurus. And you say Panch Pyare, Surnar Das, and Char Sayyidjade, and Charlie Mukte. And you keep going. I did this once in a camp with kids, and we had like 10,000. When you start talking about all the shaheeds and all the 55,000 that died at Fatehgarh Sahib, and Sikhs, there's so many people from our history. We have the greatest history. Even Winston Churchill said that Sikhs got the greatest history of the earth. The reason you have this history is because you have Guru Adibani. You are not normal. So what did the British do? They couldn't find anybody to teach their kids about value systems. So they had to invent King Arthur and Robin Hood. They weren't real people, they're fables. And America, they couldn't find anybody in their history, so they had to invent Superman, Spider-Man, and Mickey Mouse, and DC Marvel. And that's the reality. You, as a Qawm, never need to invent anybody. Because you have a Bhai Singh, you have a Mata Sahib Goy, and you have Jar Sahibzade. You have real superheroes, not made up ones. Does that make sense? And this is how you got to start speaking to your children. And then your children's confidence level goes through the roof. And so stop being like a colonized version of yourself where you think everything Gora is good. And if a Gora says something, it must be true. But if a brown person says it or a black person says it, oh, I need to check that. And this is the way we're brainwashed to do this. So what I'm saying here is the more bhakti you do now, the more spiritual children you're going to be creating. And the more spirituality will be in your future generations. And otherwise, you're just going to be another Tom, Dick and Harry that lives down the road. So that's how Guru told us to do parenting. It's very bhakti-centric. How are we doing parenting? So the first thing is, look at the relationship with your children and your grandchildren. I'll give you an example. I was invited to Yuba City. I don't know if you know Yuba City in California. We have the world's biggest Nagar Kirtan there. There's more Sikhs live in California than live in UK. Just that you can't tell because it's a big state, Kilaria. But once a year they all get together for Yuba City Nagar Kirtan. And when I was there, they had this trend there, stop now because I blasted them. They had this trend, it's called the Sweet 16 birthday party. Because whatever the Gaudiya do, they started copying. So what they did was, they basically, as soon as their kid's 16, because you can pass your test earlier there, they would buy a brand new car, cover it in a red bow, and reveal it in front of all their restadars. And I just bought them a brand new car. And when they told me that, I'm not a person that goes to Gurdwara to get money. I don't care. I just say what I want to say. I just say it. And I said to him, "This is Mahabir Kufiyan." I said that basically, I was born, my parents lived in Slough. My dad worked at British Airways here at Heathrow Airport. He used to go to work at 9 o'clock at night and work till 6 in the morning. He used to sleep for 4 hours. Then he had his own construction company during the day, and he used to go back to work again. My mum used to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, go to work at 7 o'clock in the morning. Before that, she'd already got me and my brother up, and done Jagjit Singh part with us, and then she used to work till 7 o'clock in the evening, and me and my brother were taught how to go to the school together. We had our roti ready when we came home, we warmed it up, and we used to eat it, and this was most of my childhood. Because I struggle. And you know, like when you go to India and these people are throwing these notes, you know what my dad used to say to us? He goes, in the 60s, we had to not only get our deal with National Front and all this other stuff, we used to get yoga pure, we had to send most of our money back to Punjab for our brothers and sisters and buying more kids, and then we had to build the Gurdwara. And he goes, if at the end of the week, £1 left extra, we used to say that's a really good week. Because we had all these Jummewariyan. And now they know they goes, basically they got no qadr of hard work. And this is about value systems. So I said to them that you're basically at the age of, I came back at the age of 23, 24, and I said to my parents, I'm not going to get married until I've got you retired. So by the age of 25, 26, I bought my first house, I had a good job in the city, I'd set my own care home business. By the time of 27, I gave my parents keys to a brand new car, I had paid off my house, and I said to them, you're retired, you're moving in with us, and basically don't worry about life again, go to all the swamps. Then I got married. That's called taking Jimmewari. The most important thing, if you respect your parents, is to get them retired. That should be your Jimmewari. What they're doing in there, by giving a sweet spot, tu nakamma to nakamma rahe, main fir bhi tenu sone gaddi hove, main fir bhi overtime kari jana hai. That's the messaging you're giving your children. You need to be telling your children now, my children know I want to retire next year, I'm going to do it on my own bum. But my children know it's part of their Jimmewari to make sure I'm retired. Does that make sense? In your generations. And otherwise, what's going to happen with most of you? Most of your lives, because of this Gora thinking, your lives are all over a mess. Because what's happening is, Apne bache are getting married later and later. And because you're getting married later and later, because people are going to university, doing putekam, can't get out of their system, the drugs and the sleeping around, so they're not getting married on time. And because they're not getting married on time, they're not having enough children. And then even if they do have children, by the time they have children, you are basically in your 60s, 70s, what time are you going to play with your grandkids? We got married at a certain age, had children. My parents have spent almost 20 years with my children, giving them sikya, spending time with them, enjoying their retirement properly. Because that's what true happiness is playing with your grandkids. Does that make sense? And it's about understanding these real value systems about life and not having capitalism control your life, you're controlling your life. Does that make sense? This is about messaging. Now, put your hands up. Well, let's do a bit of Tava and Bibiyan first, then we come on to the Bande afterwards. There's some aunties that will go, you've got a marriage in your house, they have hip issues, they'll take Kali suitcases to India, fill them up with suits, bring them back here, and then biaya, so they give this person a suit, that person a suit, that person a suit. You know, suit milya ho bhi kenda koi suit ya. And then there was like, bahut badhiya nand karaj ho gaya, koi badhiya. You've had no nand karaj, all you've done is suit nandi sardardi. That's all it is suit nandi sardardi. You know what Anand Karaj is? Anand Karaj is not that other people come to your house and drink booze and meat and just do putekam. That's not Anand Karaj because they're taking from you. Anand Karaj is this. Other people come to your house or your Gurdwara where you have a smagam, like we just done one in Gyani Singh's daughter. All week there's a Khan part and then there's been Kirtan every single day. And all them people from around the world that have come there, through listening to all that Kirtan, and then there's the Ranswai at the end, and at the end of the Ranswai, or in the morning at Asadivah, there's the Ananda Karaj, and they say, all this bhakti we've done all this week, we are now doing ardas to give it to the couple. That is called Ananda Karaj. Because you are giving them a spiritual present, you're not just going there to spend their money and eating it away. Does that make sense? That's what Anand Karaj should be. You're actually in a state of Anand when you're doing ardas for the couple. Does that make sense? And what we're doing is we're doing convenience because we're such in a capitalized world. Instead of having real PR, we made paisa PR. We made money PR. And so what we're doing is, let's imagine someone in Southall has a new baby. Do you go around their house? Yeah? And when you go around their house, as you're leaving their house, you see some of the parents, mainly the BBR, where they already know beforehand how much money they're going to give, but they're saying, no, B pond le lo. And then they come to some chota in the middle. And they have this routine, and they say to them, do they not say that? Because it's very convenient. When my daughter was born, Gursikhs in my area, one bibi wrote Hat Likt Gotka for her. One person said, I'm going to teach her maths. One person, I'm going to teach her Gurmani. I'm going to teach her Santhya. I'm going to teach her Gatka. Or I'm going to help her with the sports. And what happens is all the Gursikhs in the Ilaka take a jimmewari in that child's life. And that's what you call a Sangat, a village concept, where your pesa is not a £20 where you can't even buy a box of nappies now. That's called convenience. We don't get their baki life, forget them, because we're too much caught in our capitalized life. PR for that person, have real PR for that person. Don't make pesa PR and teach your children pesa is not PR, pesa is a currency, PR is PR. Does that make sense? And PR is real PR, and make your children understand what real PR is. Real PR is when you ups and downs, you're there for that person. That's what real PR is. We are not convenient. And so real PR is not £20 notes. Real PR is Gurbani and wisdom. That's what real PR is. And any of you who have ever spent any time with any spiritual Gursikhs, you will realize it's that one or two moments where they just say something to you and you will never forget that for the rest of your life. That is real PR. because the suits and the paisa will come and go, because this is who you are. As a parent, every single day you are disappearing because your time is coming, and you have a race against time that your child is complete. But if your child is not complete by the time you've disappeared, your child will always grow up incomplete. So you are in a race against time that you can give as much of your gyan, your value system, everything that you learn from life, to make your child in a better place than you have ever been, so that they have a better chance at life. And so the quicker you start that process, and the more realistic you do that process, the more seriously you do that process, the more complete your child is going to be. But if all your time is spent like just doing puttekam, drinking around, sleeping around, and basically not being an absent parent, your child is just going to grow up damaged. Does that make sense? And what is success? So we have to understand what success is, because what it is people have different definitions of success. For me, success is when you're old, your children still want to spend time with you. That is what success is. When you're budapa, are your children going to put you? I run a nursing home. Are your children going to put you in a nursing home, or do they still want to spend time with you? Because my dad used to say that. He would say, "Yeah, we built all these properties. We got good businesses. Meri asli amanat, mere bachche da character." That your true wealth is the character of your children. And it's about understanding that in life. Because time will be like this. Like Gore Joneses, because we're Punjabis, we say keeping up with the Johals. And so your Gwandi next door has built this house. So you now have to find a way of getting more in that. And then your Gwandi next door has just bought this car. And so you have to do something. And the reality is that they've got a bigger house. They've got a bigger car. They're not actually any better off. And every human being has to find their own santok, which means contentment, which is where is my balance when I'm happy. And for every human being, that's in a different place. And you just have to find where you are. You don't need to chase other people. Because let me tell you something, this is a financial lesson for you. I spend a lot of time with rich people, because the more you're in business, the more your circle becomes of people that are in business. I spend most of my time in Gursiks, but I do have other circles which are short business people, and in various countries because we do investments together. Most rich people are not happier. They just have more clara. When you're poor, basically these people must be really happy. No, they're not much happier in life. The people that are happier in life are spiritual people. The people whose value systems is based around santok, which means contentment, because they're content. Let me tell you another lesson about wealth. There's 3 types of wealth. The first type of wealth is the people that have no wealth. And that's 70% of the world's population have no wealth. They're all struggling, hand to mouth. As the money comes in, it goes out. Your mortgages, everything, your taxes, that's the majority of the world's population. Then you have people that have got a little bit of wealth. And then they're the ones that have these flashy cars, the flashy clothes, and all this other stuff, because they've got a little bit of money now, so they've got to tell everybody that they've got money. And they buy everything with design labels and everything. It's like you find some people are students, and they'll basically have to wear the flashy clothes. And I sometimes say to them, I'm your employer, I don't have a car as good as yours. I don't have a kapre as good as you. And they go, Paji, man, tusi to paise wale ya, tusi lekin kapre le liya karo. I go, because I'm not a bearfoof. You've got hardly any money, send that money to your parents. Why are you spending on like £200 jeans? Then you get the third type of wealth, which is real wealth. The people that have real wealth realize the value of being anonymous. People have real wealth don't like to tell anybody that they've got wealth, because they basically realize it's sardardi, where people know that you've got real wealth. Bhai Rama Singh, really spiritual singer from this town, I spend a lot of time with him. He used to say to me, he goes, 2 things you never let anybody know. Never let anybody know your Amrit Villa, and never let anybody know your bank balance. ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਦੋ ਹੀ ਲੁੱਟਣੇ ਆ, ਹੈ ਨਾ? They're going to bring ਸਰਦਾਰਦੀ in your life to mess up your Amrit Villa, and they're going to try and take your money. Because most people, if you buy a nice, oh, he's really cool because he's got that car, or he's really cool because he's got that house. Now what they think, oh, that's a nice car. What would I look like that in there? What would I look like in the house? What would I look like if she was my wife? And they actually have that kind of mentality where they're jealous. So the best thing you can do in life is be private. Does that make sense? Okay. So find your own sandok. Because some people say this person is sophisticated. Do you know who this person is? He's a Bollywood actor. And he's like followed by millions of people. Oh, he must be really cool. You look at him, I think, yeah, that guy's a werewolf. Look at the way he's wearing clothes. But he's really cool, man. He's really cool. And for me, ultimate simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Your Bana, your Sikhi Sroop is the most beautiful roop that you will have. If you never change your hair, if you never change your gears, if you never change the way you look, you're always beautiful because you've got that beauty from birth. And you are always beautiful. That's why I said you never see an ugly baby. But the day you start changing any part of your body is always trying to react to it because it's trying to get back to its original way. And so you're messing it up. The best thing is never touch it. Just love it. Just fall in love with your natural balance. It's called your natural equilibrium. You have that from birth. Just your gears is the way. I used to shave up until the age of 18, and my gears grew for 6 months, and they've always stayed the same size. They just replenish. Your gears only grow if you cut it. If you don't cut your gears, they grow to a natural length and then they stop. Because that's your natural length, that's your root. And all of us have a natural equilibrium to our body. The reason this world is unhealthy and got depression and everything else is because as human beings, we're constantly fighting against it. So we're basically changing our body. We're living in this fast-paced capitalistic world. We're living in these concrete jungles. And that's why I can't live in London anymore. I grew up in London. I live in countryside. I live in Haryavali. I live where there's fresh air because I've made a conscious decision to do that. I'm happy when I'm walking around in the morning because it's surrounded by birds singing and basically trees and bushes and stuff like that. You have to find your own sandok, your own sophistication. And the biggest reason, most people, the biggest disease on this earth is not cancer and AIDS. The biggest disease on this earth is anxiety and loneliness. And I don't know if you guys are in London, but most of places in most Western countries are building more apartments than they're building houses. Is the same thing happening here? Yeah? So they're building more apartments here. So what is that saying about society? That means society is breaking down. That means people are not living as families. That means people are living more by themselves. As a result, more and more loneliness is happening. The elderlies are living by themselves in their own house. The middle generation, as soon as your kids are 18, like the Gori, get them out of your house. And as a result, more and more people are living lonely. As a result, more and more people are depressed. And bachare, more and more people are having to buy kutte because they've got no one else to basically talk to. Or billion. And the reality is, the bigger your family, and if you have correct family values, and I'll talk about this in part 2, about how to communicate in a family, children that grow up in big families are always more successful in life because they have better social skills. They learn at a young age how to navigate relationships. They realize the value of pyar. If you grow up in a house where you've only got one child, that child will always struggle because they haven't got that sibling thing. Even if you fight with your sibling, it's still stimulation. I've got 4 children. My brother 3 children. I'm a big believer in having as many children as is possible and is healthy for the husband and wife. But let me tell you something. First child is the hardest child to bring up because it takes all your time and attention. By the time you've had a second child, your first child becomes very mature because it's now got something to nurture. And your children will play with children. By the time you have your third children, it's very easy because all your children play with children. Now that I've had my 4th child, I do nothing for it. The children do everything for it. Because they love having this little kid around the house. And people think, oh, it must get really hard. And what my children already grown up with how to bring a young child up, they've already got them social skills because they've just done it to someone that's younger than them. Do you understand that? This is how all our families used to be. You used to have big families where all your thai and your chachi and your puas and everything used to all grow up together. And because we basically had this migration thing, now all your thai and chachi and your pua are living in different parts of the world. But let me tell you one thing, the parvar that value this, I've seen this a lot in Canada because it's easy to immigrate to Canada. They are now bringing all them families back. They are basically paying for other people to migrate back because in Canada, they need population. Not people, they build Holt Alakia, Ben's name from there. And every year they have a convention of everybody from their band, and they go, how can we get more people here because we want to help all these people? What should we do for our band? People are now thinking like that because you're now 2nd, 3rd generation where you're now in affluence. Instead of wasting it on other nonsense, they're creating a society where the kids will grow up in a more healthy society. Does that make sense? Why, Guru? So the world is full of loneliness, elder isolation, family breakdowns, family divided across countries, debt from immigration starting anew. This leads to anxiety and depression. But let me tell you one thing. If you're a Guru that's sick, you can be alone, but you're never lonely. Does that make sense? Everybody else, all the 6 billion people on this earth, they're alone. But the Gurus are sick. What Guru has given you is this power where it says, Guru mere sang, sada hai nale. You can never be lonely because you can always talk to your Guru. So you have these Gursikhs that are in jails. Like Bhai Jagjit Singh, 16 years in and he says, I speak to my Guru. When Agora, he was in a cell, because he was this famous freedom fighter, he was put in a cell where he could not even bend his legs. So the wall was here, right in front of his face, the wall was there, and for 12 hours a day, he was made to stand in the cell where that's it. It's like a coffin. And this white Christian guy said, I want to try that, what's it like in there? And he was in there for about 30 seconds or a couple of minutes, and he was saying, Jesus, Jesus, get me out. And he goes, how have you spent all these years in there? And he goes, basically, I talk to my Guru. And this is the thing, your children, and I'll explain this main to you in part 3, your children are having higher levels of mental health than any previous generation, and the biggest reason for that is too much technology. And we're going to explain to you in part 3 why this is all happening. Too much technology. So you as a parent need to understand how mental health works. Because you're putting the seed house. And the thing about mental health, the cure to mental health, or the way it doesn't start from the beginning, is you teach your children to be spiritual. And what your spirituality is mental exercise. It's like gym work. It's like gym work for basically your mind. That's what spirituality is. The world, most of the people on this earth used to be spiritual before TVs. If you look at people in South Africa, they used to sing hymns. American Apaches, they used to sing hymns, didn't they? Even Gore in the nuns in the churches. That was their spirituality. But the more technology has come, the more we become sophisticated. So it's like you have water to it. That spirituality is now cut. And that branch, because it's got no water, no nourishment, it's still getting the sun, but it's got no water, and slowly all the green is going brown, and it's dying. And that's what's happened to society. And then we've lost our spirituality, and as a result, we basically have come like this. And then on top of that, we have this massive dopamine addiction, where we're constantly bombarded by all this thing. As a result, people have forgotten what being in Sed is all about. That how do you find your natural balance, your natural poise? So now, this is very important. I want you to concentrate on this. Because basically, you have a choice as a family. Like when we were growing up, we had a choice. This was before we discovered Sikhi. We had a choice. We could grow up as a Gora, or we could grow up as a Punjabi. And most people of my generation found somewhere in the middle. They took some bits about Gore values that they liked and some people about Punjabi values and created this fusion in the middle. Do you agree? And they were called like this British Asian. And then we realised there's a big difference between being Punjabi and being a Gursikh, because no one ever explained that to us when we were growing up. And Sikhi is actually very different from Punjabi. Punjabi is a culture. Sikhi is a way of life based on Gurbani. So Punjabi has some really good things about it, like Kulle Dil, basically helping others, so many things, but it has some bad things about it as well, like misogyny, but basically the way girls are treated to boys and stuff like that. Sikhi is pure. Sikhi is very pure. Everything about Sikhi is only positive. Now, if you bring up your kids as Gore in this westernized world, with the westernized approach to the world, they have only about dopamine, everything's about, oh, let's just on a Saturday night and get drunk and everything, they're going to look at this life from top to bottom. And if you bring your kids up as a Sikh, you're going to realise, as a Sikh, our mindset is not to go from top to bottom. Assi degde nahi hai, assi chardi kala ch rehde hain. So let's analyse this. So we're going to read this poem first as a westernised person. Okay? So today I feel trapped in this world far from my Sikhi. And do not try to convince me that there's something spiritual about every day. Yeah? Does that make sense? They're already struggling. They feel trapped in this world. They're far from their Sikhi. They can't find anything spiritual about every day. Because if you take a closer look, this world is a dark and evil place. So that person's already come to a conclusion, haven't they? Place. Do you agree? Yeah. Even if some of Waiguru's light does shine through once in a while, I can never feel satisfied or happy. It's not true that happiness is all in the mind and heart, because true happiness can be obtained. So they realise, I can be happy, but it's this far off place, I need to get to there. But I'm not happy now. You know? Only if one's surroundings are good. If not, it's not that good exists. I'm sure you can agree, my reality creates my attitude. Now this is the fundamental thing about young people growing up in the West. My reality creates my attitude. And if my reality is bad, my attitude is bad. Does that make sense? And if you're an employer, you see that all the time with young people. They don't happy with something, then everything about the world is bad. Whereas previous generations were a lot better attitude than that. Okay? It's all beyond my control, and never in a million years will you hear me say today was a good day for my Sikhi. Now, do you think that's a depressing poem? Does everybody agree that's a depressing poem? Because this is how most Gori look at life. Because that's why they're all dying. That's why their empires are all failing now. It's all coming to an end. Now, the thing about Sikhi doesn't come down, Sikhi goes up. That's what we call Chardi Kala. So let's read this as a Gursikh. Today was a good day for my Sikhi. So straight away there's a statement there, isn't there? Today was a good day for my Sikhi. Why? Because मैं तो सवेरे नितरम कीता है, मैं तो वेला कीता है, मैं तो सवेरे हुक्मनामा ले लिया है, And never in a million years will you hear me say it's all beyond my control. And never in a million years will you hear me say it's beyond my control. Why? Because it's all in my Guru's control. And मैं अपने Guru de naal hai. Does that make sense? Attitude creates my reality. Good attitude, my reality is good. It's not that my reality creates my attitude. And my attitude is good because मैं Guru da Sikh hai. And I'm sure you can agree, it's not that good exists only if one's surroundings are good. Because that's the way Guru is. If only if your surroundings are good. And Guru Sikh thinks everything's good. मैं तो Guru karta hai and I'm going to live life. And this is how your parents were. They were basically coming in here with National Front, with racism. They survived, didn't they? They got through, didn't they? They gave you a good life, didn't they? And they gave you a lot of love in your house, didn't they? And so they had all of them challenges, and they still gave you a lot of PR, didn't they? Because basically, they realized true happiness can be obtained because happiness is in the mind and heart. Because happiness is here and here, it's not out there. And if I bring Gurbani in here, and I bring my Gurbani in there, then everything is fine. And it's not true, I can never feel satisfied or happy. Some of why light does shine through once in a while. Because if every day I'm listening to a bit of kirtan, every day I'm doing my hukumnama, doing my ardas, doing my nitnem, that's why there's light in my life. Even if the world is a dark and evil place, bakiyan likhove, I don't care. That's bakiyan the problem. I bring that light into my life, therefore my life is good. Because when you take a closer look, there is something spiritual about every day. Because when you take a closer look, there is something spiritual about every day because you're doing your nitnem every day. You're doing your erasure every day. You're doing solid part every day. And do not try to convince me, today I feel trapped in this world and far from my Sikhi. And do you understand? This is very powerful because this is a mindset. You can try and be Gora, try and be fit in, trying to appease them. All you're doing is destroying your children's mindset. You can teach them Sikh history and you teach them what is the lessons of Sikh history? It's resilience. Doesn't matter what happened, they faced much worse things than we will ever face in our life. What happened with the Moguls? They designed, someone sat there and tried to think, what is the worst way I can kill a human being? They sat there and designed these things. Let's boil one in a cauldron. Let's cover one in cotton. Let's cut one of them in half. Let's design a jaggi. Let's design it and let's see how that's the worst way of killing people. Because what they thought was, let's kill these Sikhs in the most horrible way possible, that Sikhs, people be so scared, no one will ever become a Sikh again. That's what they were doing. What did we do? We put it in our ardas. We remember it every day. And it gave us spirit. And as a result, it became part of who we are. And we now realise that doesn't matter what life throws at you, does that make sense? As a parent in your life, are you going to give your kids Sikhi spirit? Or are you just going to be another liberalised Gora and basically just let them watch football and that's it? And that's the kind of mindset, because they thought they were burying us, they did not know we were seeds. Who we are. Mir Banu thought he was going to kill us. He'd wiped us. He basically took money in our head. They thought they'd killed us. Om Khatam Hogi. 50 years later, we took Raj all over Punjab. This is who we are. And if you put this seed of spirit in your children will be super successful. I put my children in the top private schools. Not because I want them to be these top lawyers or anything else. It's because I put them where I want them to compete with the best. And I give them Guru Di Bani and all this stuff. So I'll give you an example of my child. I'll talk about this in part 3. My son, he used to play Xbox when he was growing up. I wrote this talk 15 years ago, part 3, that I'm going to share with you. And he heard that about 4 or 5 times. He gave up his Xbox at the age of 8. He just gave it up because he heard my talk too many times. And then what happened is, I said, do something then. What do you enjoy? He enjoyed playing football. He started playing football. He got himself into an academy because I taught him mindset. I taught him manifestation. So I used to say to him, before you get on that pitch, you're going to do 5 minutes of Simran, and then you're going to believe you're the best player on that pitch. He did that. He's the person who played centre back, and he's never had a yellow card. And all the people say to me, he's so amazingly, he has like this surge about him. He never rushed to be armed with knowledge and basically be a preventative parent, so it becomes a problem. Does that make sense? Okay, so you guys are going to show me how in South we're very organised people. Can you guys do that? Yeah? So let's do this. Let's give you 15 minutes. It's 1:48 by 2:05. Have some langar, stretch your legs, get some sun on you, and then come back in and we keep cracking on. Is this been good? Okay. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.